VR Troopers. We are VR Troopers. Who's a VR Trooper? 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 We are VR Troopers. Lightning strikes across the skies. Everybody's cut down the size. Get Grimlock! Get Grimlock! We are VR Troopers. Who's the VR Trooper? 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 We are VR Troopers. We are VR Troopers.
Sorry for the sound effects. But hey guys, this is the Ecron Writer here, welcoming you to another project from OBS Studios. And this one was actually created since I was around like 7 and 9 years old, actually. Again, much like Cowboy Bebop and ending it all, Recession of the Red Dragons, this is another continuation project. The show, the show VR Troopers has actually been canned because, believe it or not, it wasn't due to low ratings. Compared to the Power Rangers, they were pretty successful. But it's because they ran out of stock footage. Yeah, that's the problem with Toku. Anyways, I wish they would get, like, a remastered digital version to, like, complete it. But this story does just that. We Are VR Troopers is actually a crossover between VR Troopers as well as Mutant League Football. Yeah, very unlikely, but you'll see why soon enough. They're the two things that actually inspired me when I was like 7-ish. And this story does just that. Alright, We Are VR Troopers. First off, I don't know VR Troopers and Mutant League Football, I just happened to be a huge fan when I was a youngster. Introducing the crossover I came up with since I was a kid. I came up with this idea since I was around 7 years old, and both things have influenced me greatly. It's strange that I was turned on by the VR Troopers and not their sister series Power Rangers, yet they never finished due to Saban running out of stock footage. If only we could finish a third season somehow. So without further ado, let me introduce you to something so bizarre that it may make a difference to both sides. Episode 93, The Backstory. Because the show itself had 92 episodes, even though most of them were, like, insignificant. But let's get this thing going. This all happened during the start of the football season. Grimlord General Ivar and Colonel Icebot had begun their invasion of virtual reality. At the battlefield, the former Galaxy Aces were defeating the 60 Whiners seamlessly. If you played Mutant League Football, you know how pathetic the 60 Whiners are. Until the field was attacked, and the Whiners were killed almost instantly during the bombing. Most of the audience evacuated, however, upon exposure to radiation, everyone gradually rotted and transformed into mutants, while some actually died. Bloodclot was one of the lucky players that left unscathed, yet he still turned into an abomination. Particularly superhuman. Soon, all the stadiums and fields were nuked, forming deep craters, landmines, and enormous mutations. The only inhabitants that weren't affected were the dragon-like aliens, as well as the trolls. The majority of the survivors have turned themselves into skeletons with bare bones, or freaks with superhuman enhancements. Despite the sudden losses and destruction, the football season began a complete overhaul. The Mutant League Football League was born, and customs were changed radically. Unbeknownst to them, the battle was also raging outside in the real world, where 3 young adults were recruited by Professor Horatio Hart enlisting them as the VR Troopers. Their mission was to put a stop to Grimlord's mayhem in virtual reality. They took the fight there as well as the breakthrough, the reality barrier, while the games were still taking place. It wasn't until a young girl named Cheetah Comet was playing one of her favorite Sega games that she was introduced to them personally. She first met Ryan, Caitlin, and JB as she became fascinated in learning karate at Tao's dojo. Unfortunately, she wasn't as coordinated as the rest of the junior division, nor had good balance. And neither do I. Despite her hindrances, every once in a while she'd hang out with the trio after school while also getting some help with her own work, as well as doing some odd jobs. Since then, Ryan had been a good friend and mentor towards her. That actually developed her first crush. While the team went into battle, she would watch them unfold via the professor's lab along with Hart and Jeb, encouraging her heroes on. Through a tear in the reality barrier on one fateful day as she was playing the same game, she was sucked into the war stadium and came across the players. She recognized them within a moment's notice, and the team didn't lay a hand on her. They were quite impressed that someone from the outside knew who they were. Shortly afterwards, both the Slammers and Cheetah encountered the troopers as they faced off with one of Grimlord's robots named Footbot that looked similar, though abhorrent, to an actual football player. Thinking it was an insult, Dakin and Shotgun led the ambush along with their close buddies Bloodclot, Razor Kid, Snake, Nelson, Mortar, and two trolls, Mo and Spew Puke, who are actually twins. They later introduced themselves, and the trio couldn't thank Cheetah enough for finding some reinforcements while they were searching for her. After they took her home, they decided unanimously to make contact with them utilizing Professor's technical assistance. And that was how the bond between the troopers and the Mutant League began. The guys could never forget all those times the troopers have saved and assisted their hides, as well as protected their domains. It was actually thanks to Professor Hart who managed to find some more of the resistors deep within virtual reality. They couldn't be more grateful on how their broken lives were spared. From the moment when the Val Vulgar scattered out of their turf, while the Big Bad made the nearby cave his temporary base in the Hump Dome, as Tyler Steele was held hostage, to the killer convicts and the Ice Bay Bashers helping them fight back at their slippery fields. Even the times when Grimlord invaded the Void Club, also known as the Indigo Sector, and the Red Rockers evacuated unscathed. There was also the Ruled Warriors, Psycho Slashers, Darkstar Dragons, as well as others, and even the bullies such as the Terminator Trolls and the Slay City Slayers lent a hand. As their determination grew, more and more teams bound together, drove away most of Grimlord's armies, and befriended the trio. They were quite impressed that a small number of courageous, resourceful, not to mention average humans could stand up against such unspeakable odds. Although nearly all the players were united, there was a lonesome group of robots known as the Turbo Techies that resided on a distant massive rock called Asteroid 66. They had little to no interest working with organic life forms, skin or no skin, as they were too primitive for their tastes. They were the most mysterious and they were rarely seen, unless if they were to be a new playoff scheme or the occasional single game. Not to mention, they always spoke in beeps and chirps instead of communicating in a normal manner, as Bloodclot would say. The location was eventually found as JB programmed Galileo in both worlds, which is this last episode. Unfortunately, tragedy struck. The battlefield was destroyed and the League's best team, the Galaxy Aces, have died trying to fend off Grimlord and his onslaughts. Every one of the mutants had perished, except Bloodclot, who narrowly escaped. Over time, the Slammers and their coach, the General, had officially made the troopers allies to the war effort, as did the other regrouping teams scattered across the virtual realm. JB eventually got the superhumans rounded up by Bloodclot from the Road Warriors. Ryan joined the allies, aliens, who were recruited by the Razor Kid, who was dumped by the Psycho Slashers and became a vital part of the Screaming Evils, particularly the quarterback. Jeb got Mo and Spew Puke and the Trolls due to their wicked sense of humor. Caitlin got the Skeletons, led by Snake from the Deathskin Razors. and heart mentors with the coaches, mostly with the general. At one point, the superhumans and skeletons revealed they were human once before they were mutated, so they had a soft spot for the trio. That was when Razor Kid personally got involved with helping her best friend find his father and rescue him from Grimlord. Unfortunately, the mutants were overmatched by Ziptor's massive upgrade, even by Despair's fatal staff, which incinerated some of the teammates before Ryan, with his new power suit, arrived. That was the end of that mini-series. The quest for power. Man, that was creepy. There was also a point when Snake and the Razorskins made a protest as they found out about Caitlin's dark motives, which turned out to be her doppelganger's doing. Caitlin through the looking glass. And finally, with the help from JB's little space probe, he was able to find a desolate location known as Asteroid 66, the home of the lesser-known team of the League known as the Turbo Techies. And now the long-awaited war has been declared. The fate of both worlds will soon be decided. Will Grimlord's long reign can finally be put to an absolute end in favor of the troopers and mutants? Only time and space can tell the final tale. The inspiration of Cheetah first came from a comic book that caught my eye as a kid that was simply named The Comet. And later I was also enthralled by how majestic and fast cheetahs were. I wasn't really into the comic, but I did come up with the lame alias known as the Comet for Ryan in a season 2 Avatar, and Cheetah for, well, Cheetah. So I decided to name her Cheetah Comet instead. I just didn't want to give it up on those terms entirely, but use them in a better fashion. This was before I started using OCs more properly, so I was just starting out with fanfic concepts. Besides, Ryan Steele was indeed my first ever crush. He was a very huge guilty pleasure of mine. There was always something about him that fascinated me when I was a kid. Even now, I see him as the main hero. It could be almost anything, really. I know it sounds embarrassing, but that's when this whole thing started. It's about darn time this series finally gets the finale it truly deserves. Too bad Saban ran out of footage. I don't understand why we can't just finish it with the advanced technology we have now. I doubt the cast would be willing to reprise their roles, and the actors that play Tao and Carl have bit the dust. So, I'm tired of false hope. Let's finish this thing, shall we? Let's start with the first chapter. Well, actually, the 94th episode. I forgot to mention that the mutants' possible debut to the series is Field Goal, which was a shame since they didn't make an appearance until way after the Darkheart arc. If only I can remember when I really introduced him. Aside from the cancellation due to the depletion of stock footage, there's one tiny problem that really bothered me. The VR Troopers never had a freaking army! I'm sick that it's just the three of them against Grimlord without an army! How can he stand a chance against him and his army without one? How? Sorry for that outburst, but in all honesty, the odds would have been truly against them if this should happen. I mean, have we forgotten what happened to Ryan Steele during Season 2? I never thought he'd be back after he lost his virtual powers, nor survive the self-destruction of the dungeon. Grimlord has been becoming stronger since minute 1. Also, the last episode, Galileo's New Memory, may have a good ending since Grimlord was stranded in space, but it just wasn't satisfying enough. Also, in some personal way, a certain theme could be played. So let's get on with it. Episode 94, The Virtual Reality War. The story begins as usual with Ryan at the ancient Buddhist temple, summarizing something very serious and also developing a lesson his dad taught him. His greatest of all was humanity. I don't want to butcher him in any way. My dad has taught me many things while I was growing up. From when I was a simple baby to a mature tween, it was just me and him alone and against the world, as he taught me his greatest virtues and attributes, not just in learning how to fend yourself, but also those lessons about life itself. He has been an inspiration to me, and I was so glad that I finally returned to him safe and sound after 10 long years while he was gone. I feel I've been becoming more like him every day, and that's all that I wanted to be. But one of his most prestigious lessons that he bestowed upon me, and the only one that summed up everything that I was taught, was humanity. And that was one lesson that I will never truly forget. In an opaque basement being crowded by various gizmos and gadgets, Dr. Poindexter was marveling over JB's robot, who was just rescued by Caitlin and JB from Grimwood's virtual dark fortress. During that time, a program, or rather a calculation of the universe, overrode Oriclon's drainage, resulting in overload and rendering the ship unusable and immobile. Upon the robot's freedom, the creepy head circuits and computer banks were fried. He was actually destroyed twice. Once prior when Ryan blasted away his tentacles and small body by his laser pistol, while also impaling his center third eye by his laser saber. As he was being stranded in deep space and cyberspace, Grimlord then vowed revenge for the troopers as his lair and Oriclon were being repaired, but with very little luck. Just then the tech geek met up with the troopers and Cheetah, and he couldn't be more happier to see them after saving JB's prized possession. Guys, so glad you made it! I can't thank you enough for rescuing Galileo. No problem, Doc. It was easy, actually. JB just set off an explosion to that scary head Oriclon. What she's trying to say is JB had commanded Galileo to calculate the entire universe, disabling the drainage and destroying Oriclon in the process. So now that Grimlord's in space somewhere, does that mean he's finished for good? Have you finally won the battle? Cheetah made a huge grin, though the trio just looked at each other. Before she made an outburst, Ryan intervened. We're not really so sure about that yet. Galileo's head began twisting. I can help you find the Dark Fortress if you like. Yeah, maybe we can really find him and finish him off this time. I don't know, Cheetah. Grimlord could still be in virtual reality somewhere. Hey, maybe we can plug in Galileo into the virtual world so he can help track him down. Great idea, JB. Do you think he can do it? I know so. I did program him to keep our secrets safe, just in case anything happens to the lab, or any other piece of information Grimlord could find. Let's bring Galileo to the lab. I'm sure he can be very useful in finding the Dark Fortress location. He paused for a moment, thinking that this could be the day when his nemesis would fall and his father would be safe. Hey, Ryan, you okay? Yeah, I just hope we can pull out all the stops and finally finish him off, so that both worlds and my dad would finally be safe. Then let's do it. Then let's do it. We'll definitely take the fight to him. He shared his friend's determination. Poindexter wished them luck as they marched out of his technology trove. They made it to Professor Hart's lab, and for once, without incident, not even an attack made by any of the evil Overlord's airfighters. Jeb was still lounging on the long platform awaiting a scrumptious meal to be materialized. While JB was hooking Galileo up to his computer, there was a contact coming to the lab itself. I'm picking up a signal from the war stadium. The general is hailing us. He showed him. There was a crimson top hat, a suit with the same color, and yellow reptilian skin with a pair of ears sticking out like a bat's. General, what a surprise! He was undoubtedly her favorite Mutant League football coach, particularly to her preferred team, the War Slammers. Hey, troopers, I heard you were successful in disabling Grimward's virtual fortress. But I sincerely doubt the battle's over. Yeah, we kind of feel the same way. Galileo is being hooked into virtual reality so we can find the location. It's about time we'll finish him off. Yeah, I've also heard about JB's contraption, and as long as Colonel Icebot and General Ivar are around, our nemesis would find a way to make the fortress operational again. Which still brings me to something I've regretted I'm not informing you sooner. What is it, General? I'm sure you guys haven't heard of the Turbo Techies yet, have you? They all replied they haven't, although Cheetah was the only one that had. The Turbo Techies! They're a team of robots! Indeed they are, Cheetah. They reside on this desolate area in space known as Asteroid 66. It has low gravity and it usually orbits around the Void Club. We're on it, General. Look, I got it. Location of Asteroid 66 confirmed. Everyone went over and a large rotating particle of gray space rock was revealed, its rocky terrain covered in craters. They eventually saw an actual field complete with goalposts and yard lines. They discovered from the robot's sensors indicating a large particle of space rock that had a football field. The mutant immediately described it as a desolate location that is home to the elusive team in the entire mutant league, the Techies. They were known as a group of hardwired robots, each one looking and sounding alike. They were also led by their coach named Trans Shooter, who also happens to be an active teammate from time to time. They had weak reserves, meaning they couldn't stand direct hits, though their attacks such as electrocution and rumble fumble can leave some powerful marks. I apologize for not telling you, troopers, but the Techies is a team we know the least about, and possibly one of the weakest. Hey, better late than never, General. We should check it out. Maybe they can help us find Grimlord. I'll transform and emerge onto the surface. Great idea, Ryan. I wouldn't be so certain. The General did say the Techies are the least well known. It may be unwise to let them meet someone who's not a mutant. They may not welcome intruders. That's foreign to them. Ah, yes, the professor has a point there, as always. We need to make a good impression instead of waging war. They're very territorial on the turf. Besides, we can't bring our hopes up too high as they could be a threat. Tell you what, I'll send my team to the astral field and negotiate with them. My colleagues has met them a few times during the season, mostly in single games. He enlisted the usual to investigate low-gravity turf. However, they had no ways of reaching it. Instead, JB programmed Galileo and asked it to create a portal in the Indigo Sector, or as the mutants call it, the Void Club, which then led to their destination. Portal successful, leading to Asteroid 66. Okay, the mutants are on their way. Let's hope for the best. They unanimously decided to stick together just in case if the Techies should strike unawares, although they needed to tread carefully since there was a few pit holes with incredible deaths from many meteors that impacted the field. This also explained why the terrain itself looked so jagged, as it appeared to be a shooting gallery's target, as well as having some collapsible areas here and there. Although there wasn't any landmines, the only hazard present was wandering off the asteroid into the intense vacuums of deep space. Unfortunately, they realized they were too late, for the astrofield was already barren with no members of the Techies in sight, not even on the mint green end zones. Caitlin asked her after several moments had passed. The team was keeping an eye on the mutants. Find anything yet? No, not yet. How's it going up there? This place looks deserted, and it's no wonder considering it's said to be constantly hit by space rock. Or maybe it's because they can't stand the smell of burning wires, nor oil after they take a dump. Bleh. Good one, Mo. Oh, you and your distasteful sense of humor. You need to come up with better jokes this time around. Yeah, well, the only live thing we see is that skull goalpost moving its head around, looking at us. Ugh, this guy's really creeping me out a little. You sure you don't want us to come down? I'm positive, JB. I don't want you guys to waste your time since there's no sign of intelligent life anywhere. The ghoul's head fixated on the mutants and shot some red laser beams from its eyes. It scrambled in every direction to avoid the lethal rays. They were far from safe as the skull later detached itself and continued its rampage. The guys at the lab were growing worried for them, and the pukes accidentally collided with each other, stunning them. We gotta destroy that skull! He was about to take out some long red grenades until Kid stopped him. No, we gotta get out of here! The General warned us they're territorial! It's trying to defend itself from intruders! We have to get going before we've turned to the stakes extra crispy. I'm sending the vortex command now. As they saw the mutants escape to the Indigo sector, Ryan then found his words. Kid, mutants! Are you all right? Yeah, that was close, but not close enough. We owe you one, JB. We owe you one, JB. It's no wonder the general said they were territorial. Yeah, but this is very unlikely. I've never seen anything like this before. It's mostly just for show. Cheetah was freaked out by that stunt, and she was being comforted by Caitlin and Jeb. Do you think maybe Grimlord? He must have programmed the goalpost to keep some of the mutants at bay. Maybe he has something to do with the techie's disappearance. If that's the case, then it's possible that they are working for him. That put the mutants in a shocked silence. That can't be! You mean that the techies have been working for him right under our snotty noses? That does not rock! More like heavy metal. The Dark Fortress must still be operating somewhere in space. I'll have Galileo track its coordinates, and also the techies as well. Hurry, JB. I don't like the sounds of this. I knew the battle was far from over. The heroes dismayed. There were Wires, Circuit, Gil 9000, Robotus, Nitram, and Transshooter within the center of the stage. Orclon was still gone. There were still two Master, the Vixens, and Despera. Orclon was missing. The head of the techies was standing in the front, its eyes sneering a shiny cinnabar. So, the mutants and the VR troopers have fallen into my trap and discovered my plans. Indeed they have, sire. With the turbo techies under our control, we shall triumph over our enemies and soon rule all of reality. Turned out that they beat the heroes to the punch, and through reprogramming by Icebot, they were subordinate and loyal to him and his warriors. The virtual Dark Fortress wasn't moving before. It was conveniently above that asteroid field. His troops saw the wandering bots, then descended and abducted the techies with little effort. The Dark Lord may not need Orclon after all, since he claimed they're far better with having knowledge of the Mutant League and were more versatile. Without their mutant army, the troopers will be defenseless and easier to defeat. As usual, they cheered. Back at the lab, the general hated the heroes because the techies were the least known, and their attacks were lethal to organic mutants. The troopers might not be ready, and Professor Hart added, it'll take the infiltration of Grimlord's spacecraft difficult. JB even tried not to just look for it, but also hacking it in for a weakness or a breakthrough. Those attempts were useless thanks to the techies' protective firewalls. Sheeta asked how they're going to find and penetrate it. There was only one way to resolve this issue. The group dreaded this, but they had no choice. They must let the eggheads, Tyler and Professor Hart, do the upgrades. Wait, you really think my dad can do it? I'm positive, Ryan. He does still have the knowledge and resources of advanced virtual technology. It was no surprise since Tyler Steele claimed he was trekking around the world for more highly advanced technology in order to turn the tides of the battle. He did create the troopers, after all, and he gave his son a redesigned virtual suit. That alone raised Ryan's and Cheetah's confidence, although he was held back on the possibility he could get captured again. A few days later, this is actually taking too long. Alright guys, I'll continue this later. This is just dragging on too long. So, this is the Ecron Writer signing out, and I'll see you guys next time. Welcome back to another episode of We Are VR Troopers. Last time, there's actually that backstory which considers the VR Troopers as well as their unlikely allies, known as the Mutant Football League. And during Grimlord's invasion, virtual reality was affected, as were the mutants, either by death, destruction, or radioactivity, transforming them into mutants, mostly skeletons and superhumans. And because they were being invaded, they decided to help out the VR troopers thanks to Cheetah, who has actually introduced them to the heroes. And with their combined efforts, every team has been recruited, and so there was only one team that has never been found, which was the Turbo Techies. They live on asteroid 66, which is close to the Void Club, aka the Indigo Sector, and conveniently enough, the Dark Fortress was actually hovering over that location. After Orklon was destroyed, the Turbo Techies got it up and running again. So the conflict isn't over yet. What will happen next? Well, let's find out. Sorry I ended it so abruptly before. It was just dragging on too long. So here goes. A few days later, as the experts were doing their own thing, the troopers and Cheetah were relaxing at a nearby park. Their minds weren't completely at ease, however, as they couldn't get the mutants' fate nor the anticipated plans nor Gremlin's new agenda with the techies off their minds. They were also curious as to who they were and what they were capable of, even Cheetah. While they were discussing, she was easily distracted by her schoolwork. Lake Grammar School was not so easy. JB volunteered to help her understand her reading assignment about answering some questions that required critical thinking. Soon they were ambushed by Skugs who were disguised as park attendants, one of them holding a rake, and the quartet were getting tired of them. "We'll deal with this later. We got a struggle of our own." Ryan ordered Cheetah to hide with Jeb, which wasn't really a surprise. "Come on, Jeb, let's go," she said as she led him away to a hiding spot by which she had trouble finding. It was easy for the hounds as he scurried into a fallen trash can. Cheetah refused to go in it, gagging all the while. During the fight, one thug eventually fixed on the single target. "Jeb, run!" Keenan actually obeyed her. She avoided his advances on her using her evasiveness. "Get away from me, you stupid lunkhead!" She actually managed to kick the goon in the chest, forcing it back. He glided toward a bench, then pummeled on the pavement on its back. She then marched up and gave it another kick to its head, while he saw an opening. Ryan gave a strong kick to another Skug, backing it toward the other, and they both dissipated when their bodies made contact. Meanwhile, both Caitlin and JB got their hands full as the remaining pair transformed into Ultra Skugs. They strenuously finished them as one of the pseudo-monkey's bodies got caught in between the two intersecting tree trunks. Cheetah was quite excited. This was the first time she ever confronted the foot soldiers, and the trio couldn't be more prouder. She wished she could have finished a whole legion of Skugs that'll surround her. Then she would knock one into the other and the remaining thugs would follow suit, resulting in a domino effect. That was an idea I had with the episode when Caitlin was dealing with her nightmares. And there was a nightmare in which Ryan was surrounded by a huge ring of Skugs, and I'm like, come on, use the domino effect. Knock them into each other. It's just that easy. All of a sudden, there was a chirp coming from Ryan's VRVT, interrupting the brief congratulations. It was the general again, and this time both he and his soldiers looked as if they were loaded for bear. They were also very frantic. He informed angrily the anxious mutants couldn't wait forever, as each one of their domains were being bombarded by Grimlord's assaults. All their home fields and stadiums were devastated as he showed him screenshots. Only a small handful of lucky survivors from every team averted from his wrath, including Clock Kid himself as well as others. All of virtual reality was destroyed except for one single area, Asteroid 66. The general rallied up his troops. "Listen up, slime buckets! You no longer hold that rancid rank anymore. You've now evolved into troopers just like them. Grimlord may kill us all as well as our homes, but he can never break our spirits. I keep telling my colleagues back here that these warm feelings of peace and serenity wouldn't last. No matter how many times we have won, he'll always sprout out from the ashes of failure. And so will we! We should let Grimlord know who's boss. And we shall show him that he won't live long enough to be the master of the virtual world. This is our domain. We should let our rage fill our heads. no matter how much space there is up there. If we win this one, you shall expect me to treat you all with the utmost respect, but don't count on it. Now don't try to change your one-track berserker minds. We are going to fight in this final war, with you or without you. Transmission ended. They were going back to the lab via Caitlin's red automobile. Racer Kid soon snarled over the display. Ryan! I've never seen the General like this. He may be angry and crazy, but this is just beyond insanity here. I always had a desire in dominating my own world. Not let mine be dominated by that Meijin monster. We're the only ones who could prevent all this, and we can both rule it together with absolute valiance. You and I, and your old man have suffered enough. This is not a game anymore. It's war! Run away, kid. This truly is a battle to the end. Well, if it's a fight he wants, if it's a fight he'll get. He should never let Grimward rule all realities. We're right with you. So we're heading back to base. The War Slammers led the invasion to the Indigo Sector. This is it, my loyal and trusted subjects. If we won't live to see another dire day, just remember, we are the War Slammers, and this is what we do! Yeah! With their gorilla and sharp weapons drawn, they rushed in and tackled some of Grimlord's skugs down so deep that even the grave diggers would have a hard time finding their scrap metal. The Flamers were joined by the weaker teams, including the Road Warriors, the Rad Rockers, Killer Convicts, and the Vile Vulgars. Their might and blood were boiling as hot as magma despite the henchmen's lethal tactics, including Despera's staff. That alone caused the armies to scramble and their numbers dropped drastically. The human quartet made their entrance, and Tyler was awaiting them. Professor, the mutants are going on a full-scale assault on Grimlord and his armies. It has been confirmed. The mutants have declared war. Knowing them, they won't stop until all the blood has been shed. This is not good. My friends are out there. They'll never stand a chance as long as they charge into battle this way. We need strategy, tactics. They could be done for if they continue to be so reckless, even against Despair and Grimlord's other generals, even the techies. Which is why we may need you. Dad? Are you sure about this? Definitely, Ryan. Her time is now. It is true we need to plan our strategies accordingly. Otherwise, we cannot win. He switched on a translucent wall capsule containing a yellow armor suit that's about 4 feet tall, has a hungry face and spots related to a wildcat's, complete with a long curly tail. Through all of Cheetah's valiant efforts, directly and indirectly, Tyler demonstrated her the new virtual suit, which had similar traits to Cheetah despite the arm and leg blades. It even came with her own whipping tail designed for offense and balance. Her outlook was the first of its kind, being enhanced with animalistic abilities, though it was experimental, and she may not be as powerful as the other troopers. She was still a beginner after all, especially in combat where she could barely hold her own. Wow, Tyler, this is great! Thank you! She beamed, her face lighting like a Christmas tree. She thought she could never have that golden opportunity, and literally so. Oh, I almost forgot. The real virtualizer. He hung it over. It illuminated in a bright electrical banana hue, including the topaz. Do you accept the responsibility that has been given to you? The choice is yours, Cheetah. She looked at her friends who were wearing both expressions of disbelief and admiration. Yes, sir! Virtualizer was placed in her small but trembling palm. Are you ready, Cheetah? Just say the magic words. Everyone stood back as she told them, took a deep breath, and raised her pendant proudly as she shouted, Trooper transform! We are VR! In a flashy display, Cheetah gradually changed into a cheetah-esque armor. The spectators could have sworn it let out a purr, like a wild cat about to claim its prey. This was truly the first time that Cheetah has proven her worth as the fourth virtual reality fighter, and the VR war itself is only the beginning. Sorry I had to cut out. It was just dragging on for too long. If there's any species of the Mutant League that'd be my absolute favorite, it's gotta be the aliens. I always liked those dragons from the Psycho Slashers or any other team I'd see them in. They look, perform, and even sound awesome. And I'd always consider them to be great allies to Ryan since they're both great. Also, from a guide I found, each species has certain characteristics that can be similar to every trooper. For instance, the aliens are considered as wild cards. I'd probably pick the same for Ryan since you never know when they're gonna get out of a jam. Believe me, Ryan has found himself in trouble many times. JB and the Superhumans are both well-rounded and perhaps the strongest offensively, while Caitlin and the Skeletons are nimble and quick and the Trolls are just brutes on the field. Speaking of which, you gotta admit, the dialogue in Mutant League football is so hilarious, as graphic as it may sound. If you played the game, you know. Also, when the troopers fight the Skugs, one of my favorite... those are just the songs here. I kind of want this fic to be in a movie-like format instead of the usual syndicated series. I had a theme song for Cheetah, but I forgot what the commercial was. It was a very epic theme song with a trumpet, but I can't find it. Anyway, the VR war has begun. This time it's personal, as the mutants have finally desired to bring Grimlord to his knees, as the series itself had failed to do. But they're currently fighting a losing battle using brute force instead of tactics. And that's when Tyler and Cheater will come in. What will happen next? We'll find out next time. Until then, this is the Ecron Writer signing out. And stay tuned for the next episode. Ciao, everyone. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of We Are VR Troopers. Last time, the war has actually started, and Grimlord just got word from the Turbo Techies that they're planning a full-blown assault on virtual reality. So the war has begun, instead of dealing with just mutant after mutant, like day after day, week after week. It's a full-scale assault. And rather than using tactics, they were using brute force, which resulted in Grimlord's favor. So Tyler has actually introduced Cheetah as the new 4th trooper. So, with that out of the way, let's get this over with. Alright, here we are, episode 95, Make Way for the Cheetah. Once heard this oldie when I was a kid. At first I thought it sounded like it was saying the cheetah, but after listening to it more I realized it was actually saying the cheater instead. It was by Bob Kuban and the Inmen, actually. Cheetah continued to admire her new VR avatar, which had similar traits to a cheetah, almost like her namesake. Meanwhile, the mutants were still intercepting blindly into battle, with Grimlord obviously having the upper hand, and Tyler Steele had just returned to the lab. He told the troopers, especially Ryan, that he's been to many places that research in VR technology, including Norway, where his former teacher, Dr. Daniel Jacobson, and his daughter Lori were, as well as Tokyo, Vancouver, even the Quest compound in Maine. He's found another mentor known as Dr. Benton Quest, and his vast creation of Quest World was unique and incredible. It turned out that virtual technology exists in other places, and they must stop Grimlord now before it evolves immensely. Specifically, before the advent of the new millennium, where virtual world would become a full-fledged universe, in other words, cyberspace. Wow. So virtual technology does exist. It's being developed throughout the world, and it'll soon be all around us. Let's not forget about the internet. Can't wait to see what that'll have in store. I'm so sick of using the Ethernet and landlines. It is so yesterday. Indeed it will, Ryan. That is why we must pull the plug on Grimlord now before he becomes unsurmountably powerful, before all forms of VR technology will become more prominent. And eventually cyberspace will bend under his will. There's no time to waste. Cheetah! Looks like a deer in headlights. I will need your powers to assist us in this fight. We should go too, Dad, just until she gets the hang of it. His father was about to say something until an alarm went off. Battle grid alert! Prepare for battle grid mode. I'll go with Cheetah on this one. You guys stay with my dad and monitor the war. Be careful and take care of Cheetah. I will. Ready, Cheetah? You bet, Ryan. She was so thrilled on having her mentor come along. How can it get any better than this? Although I should warn you, if any of you should fail to defeat the Skugs in the battle grid, you would be lost in there forever. I'm aware of that, Dad. Won't let anything happen to her. While the duo transformed and then vanished, there was a prolonged silence, excepting Caitlin and JB pondering for their safe return. Tyler seemed to wear a guilty expression, although he's a bit relieved that Ryan was away, as he was hesitant to explain to him about something. Detecting tense brainwaves. Thanks, Galileo. Hey, what's wrong? Is it Cheetah? Or the mutants? Troopers, there is something that's going to be very hard to explain. I'm glad Ryan's not here to listen to this. What is it, Tyler? You can tell us. After another brief pause, he later revealed that Grimlord is actually Carl Zichter and his VR avatar. Nobody was able to make the connection, nor thought it was him, although Hart suspected as such. Then again, it wasn't too much of a surprise, as they saw Carl himself, rarely in person, always polluting and corrupting the city. It was not really a shocker, since Tyler, Carl, and Horatio were specialists in VR technology. Then all of a sudden the box of ISIS got in the way and complicated matters, causing Zichter to grow more in power, use his VR avatar for the first time, and become an arch-rival to the group, nearly killing Hart in the process with his incredible abilities. After over a decade of waiting, Tyler finally put the pieces together thanks to some awesome mutants, the General and Razor Kid. It all started when the War Slammers coach heard of the troopers' archaeological journey. Ryan had been researching an explorer named Nebraska Smith, although Cheetah, needless to say, had no interest, since she said it was too complicated and way out of her league. Through that statement alone, that was when she made the call to the General and he sent Razor Kid along because he felt going to another dimension was very risky, so he only resorted to him. No heroics, which was unlikely, no better timing since Ryan, and conveniently enough, Doom Master showed up. Caitlin, JB, and Nebraska were petrified, and Jeb broke the professor's news. After the two brawlers were heading to the Indigo sector, Ryan managed to solve the lethal puzzle made for intruders. He was then ambushed by Despera, and Kid was left out of the picture again. So the quarterback found out from an old dusty chest containing a neon green hue and a large rock with huge blemishes containing Grimlord's true identity. Sadly, Ryan left them behind since Caitlin and JB were still petrified by two halves of a mysterious shell that Doom Master used and that Desperate dropped during combat. As Razor Kid examined the face of Grimlord, he opened the lid, and an energy beam hit him at dead center, knocking him out cold as Ryan was dealing with Hydrabot. By the time he was awakened, however disoriented, the gateway to the dimension was being sealed forever, and the puzzle itself had turned to dust as soon as everyone escaped. Grimlord's real human identity is none other than Carl Sector. We need to look for a settlement, Sector Industries, and enter it. It was all happening so fast that I wasn't able to tell it was him until the General and Kid unveiled it. Soon after, Ryan and Cheetah returned victoriously. He explained she was at a losing streak until the mutants, Clot and Kid, arrived in the nick of time. Blood Clot and Razor Kid are with you guys? Great! I'll contact them. Can you send them a link, Professor? Will do, Tyler. A few minutes later, the superhuman and the dragon were displayed. They greeted him, and Tyler gave them the lowdown. The Misfits tried with their associates, but the General and the War Slamers had their hands full. You guys need to find a rip through the reality barrier. I'm going in after them. Dad, no! I must do it, son. To monitor the war directly. Clot was at a loss for words. Kid tried to talk some sense. But Tyler! No arguments now. This isn't the time nor the place. You guys promised me you'd look out for me after I was rescued by the troopers. So this would be your assignment. Wait a minute. You're not just gonna go out there without some VR equipment. Which is why I need Cheetah. She would be a perfect distraction. Distraction? But I'm just starting out. Brute force can only escalate the problem. We need tactics to outmaneuver Grimlord. There's too much heat. We can't let the VR troopers intervene just yet unless we dwindle their numbers. If anything should go awry, she can always return to our reality. All right, but if anything should happen to you two, get out. We'll be keeping an eye on you guys from here. Galileo has set the location. Together, Cheetah and Tyler found a rip into Clot's and Heart's coordinates and went through it while being escorted by the Road Warrior, along with Scary Ice and a few others such as Motar, Bomber, Assault, Dawkins, Shotgun, and Nelson. Master Grimlord, a VR trooper has entered our reality. Excellent, Despera. We will show the techies what they're truly made for, to divide and conquer the mutants, and soon these meddling troopers. There's more to it, sire. It is Cheetah, and she has gathered herself with the other mutants. Send an assault team down there now. We should clip their wings and never let them soar too high to victory. Do whatever is necessary to eliminate them. Understood. Once we seize the novice trooper, they will be as weak as kittens. Her loss will be our gain. They emerged in a desolate battleground. With the war raging in the distance, there were so many weapons firing and a lot of shouting. Tyler functioned as another effective general. The other head coaches, such as Briska, Trickster, Madness, and Bones, worked more indirectly as they led their own teams, providing tactical advantages while the general did strategic ones. First off, Tyler whispered to Cheetah to stay put as he assigned some of the best kickers against Grimlord's aerial attackers, the killer helicopter Air Striker and fighter bot, the humanoid jet. Moments later, after he gave the other coaches his plans, He ordered to wire the footballs and wait for the diversion underneath the thick canopy. Clock figured it was insane going low ground, as one collision with branches can make the balls explode, destroying everyone in the process. Risk was part of the game, he said. There they are. There they are. Tyler and Cheetah are hard to see, but according to my thermal scans, they're beneath some thick trees. The location was put into view, and everyone saw the two volatile air forces circling around, firing lethal laser at the mutant armies, causing some collateral damage. I'll transform some of the Blue Hawk to help us out. I got another idea. Cheetah and the mutants will help us clear the way. Professor, are her powers ready? Her abilities are fully functional. She can activate them now. Cheetah, I want you to wait for my signal. You see these goons flying around? Yeah, I think so. Okay, I want you to go with the mutants as soon as I give the go-ahead. Run as fast as you can and never look back. They will run right beside you. Don't be afraid. We have everything covered. Just believe in what you can do. Everyone, use your super speed to run alongside Cheetah. We will distract Fighterbot and Air Striker, allowing the kickers to have all the fun. We must make a preemptive strike on Grimlord's forces. Is that understood? You will tire out in a minute, so use it well. She was quivering from top to bottom, but she knew in her heart she can do it, just like her friends would. Air Striker was looming closer overhead. Go, now! Cheetah went first, then came the mutants. With 3 seconds of running, Cheetah's VR powers were activated as she gained speed, going as fast as 60 miles per hour. Her allies followed suit using their super speed, just like rushing toward the end zone before making a touchdown. They were all hurrying to the other side where more thick canopies awaited them at the other side as they were heading toward it on a smooth, skinny pathway. At first, Cheetah was a bit terrified by the sudden increase in speed, but after a few moments, it was exhilarating. Targets in range! It shot a volley of lasers and a few missiles, but due to their enhanced running distance, they were a near miss. As soon as they reached the point underneath the shade, they all skidded to a stop on their feet. They were burning from the sudden halt, but the experience itself was so thrilling, to say the least. The decoy was successful, accompanied by mutants covering her, though Stryker was still in the pursuit for them, worrying the troopers. Now, kickers, take them down! Elsewhere in the war zone, several other monsters watched the two pilots circle around the targets, though they had no cover, and another superhuman led the fray on a tall cliff. You heard the man! Let's do it! They were shot down, however, Fighterbot collided toward the high precipice, causing a shock. Then the airships came out of nowhere and shot the summit, and the overzealous kickers fell to their demise. Meanwhile, the general was observing far away, and he contacted Tyler as angry as ever. Who gave the order to attack from out of the open? No order, sir. Some of the guys got cocky and disobeyed. This is bad. This is very bad. They've sent the attack drones. We got to stop them from making any more casualties. Victory cannot be in Greenlord's hands. So much for the foolproof plan. He was quite fueled by some of his best and some of the worst teammates by staying on open high ground where they could be vulnerable to aerial attacks. Cheetah and the other linebackers noticed the airspace was clear from where they stood. Coast is clear! Those crazy kickers have eradicated the air bogies! I can't wait to clobber more of Grimlord's cronies! They're no match for us! Come on, let's head back to our brave leader! No need, mutants. I'm right here. It was Tyler. They all saw him within the woods as the alien embarrassedly tried to take back his snarky forked tongue. Well done, Cheetah. She grew ecstatic, saying he should have seen her. He already has and congratulated the mutants, though Scary Eyes wasn't convinced as he gave him a doubtful stare. Hey! Shouldn't you have been on the other side of the pathway with your old buddies? How did he get here so fast? He doesn't have super speed like us. Wait a minute. He threw a nearby rock. Cheetah, stay away! It's nothing but a disguise! He's not Tiger of Steel, but It was Doom Master, the alien hissed. I should have known it was you! And I thought I was the one that makes life forms get the jitters. I'm Scary-Eyes! Nice to meet you. Your prestigious plan has slipped from your fingers like butter. Bring me the girl, and no one should get maimed. She cowered into them. Never! Never! We won't give up by the likes of you! Very well. Vixens! Take her away. We will deal with the meddlesome trio later. Grimlord will be pleased once we are through with her, and they would be at our mercy. The lethal team marched up to the opposing group and started a free-for-all. It was 5 against 7, but they really became too much for the intimidated linebackers. One of them told her to skedaddle, but Doom was close on her trail. Sheeta scampered to her feet and ran out of the dark thicket, but the tall diabolical minion immediately teleported inches away in front of her, stopping her at her tracks. She went the other way, but she was grabbed from behind. Her mouth was covered, barely making her screams audible. She kept struggling to escape Doommaster's strong grip, but she couldn't escape no matter how hard she thrashed. They were taken away to a location unknown. From the other side, Tyler, Clot, and the commander stood by waiting for the rest of their team to show up. One of them pointed out the distant canopy shaking. Noticing it could be a sign of a struggle, Mr. Steele led them away from their hideout. By the time they arrived, Scary-Eyes and his groups were defeated. Doom Master and the Vixens have overmatched us and taken Cheetah away. Stop them! Oh no! Cheetah! Where did they take her? Scary-Eyes only lifted a finger and then succumbed to his injuries. She was taken to a cliff with a body of deep water 15 feet below. Despair and the Vixens watched as her feet were slipping. She was also doing whatever she could to prevent herself from falling off the eroding edge, since she was Egyptian when she was created. Ah, the cheetah! So majestic and mighty and worshipped by all. But she is definitely far too inferior to match up with those sacred animals. Even the VR troopers! She cannot swim, and neither would a cat. A cheetah may be a mighty feline, but she is only a puny little cub. Say goodbye to your friends, little kitty. You're all washed up. Fare thee well, furball. Then dropped her. She fell and plunged to the deep lake below, drowning as she was flailing her limbs trying to keep herself afloat, only to have another of her virtual powers spontaneously activate. Tiny microscopic hairs started to grow on her fingertips. By the time they did, they allowed her to attach herself to the rocky terrain. She broke the surface as her fingers made a strong clasp. She was able to resurface with little time to spare. She noticed the newly grown needle-like material. After a few minutes catching her breath and receiving air to her excruciating lungs, she was able to scale the cliff to the top, where it was empty from Grimlord's generals. Teller alerted the trio almost as though he was losing breath. Troopers, I have some difficult news to tell you. It's Cheetah. Grimlord's thugs had taken her, and some of the mutants lost their vitals trying to protect her. What? No. Dad, we need to transform and get her out of there. I'll lock onto Cheetah's coordinates. Oh, man. I found her. What? He saw her drenched and confused, but she was just wandering away from the lake. Dad, she's all right. What? Son, are you certain? She's okay. We see her walking away from the water. Oh, thank goodness. I need to retrieve her, but under no circumstances do not engage the enemy. All right, Dad. I hope you two can make it back in one piece. He immediately saw Cheetah and Tyler alive and well. She, on the other hand, was a bit bewildered and dumbfounded. Everyone cheered on their return, though she couldn't remember how to turn back in her retro form. Then Ryan pointed it out. She sat on the long examination table. She caved in and broke down. Friends were right by her side, even though she doubted she wanted to be a trooper again. After a while, she was still admiring Tyler's awesome ingenuity. He did save her life twice, just moments apart, utilizing the cheetah's natural abilities. She herself doesn't make a good climber. She never even said a single action. He reminded them it was experimental, and he mentioned that cheetahs can make excellent climbers and runners. With this sete, she could scale any surface she never thought possible. Unfortunately, some of the mutants' best linebackers, including Scary Eyes, have perished. I dread for the worst. With the techies' new programming, and as long as they're in Zector's hands, virtual technology will be more powerful than we can ever imagine. I can't wait to mash these machines into space dust. They might as well perish along with their lifeless world they walk on. No, we mustn't destroy them. Listen to me. We need to spare their lives. It's the only way we can have an advantage in this war. Instead, they need to be incapacitated so they can be reprogrammed to our side. Grimlord would send out his more powerful cadets later, as with the coaches. They'll deploy their stronger teams. The Psycho Slashers, Screaming Evils, Slay City Slayers, Misfit Demons, and the Midway Monsters. But we must continue our fight without their good kickers and runners, but with a pure heart and a clear mind. There's a better way of infiltrating Zictor Industries and crush the Green Prism within. If you've seen The Quest for Power, you should know this. Because it was still a Halloween season, the timing couldn't be more convenient. He prompted Cheetah to go as a trick-or-treater in a cheetah costume, while she could bring a few mutants along using their costumes as a ploy. Without that prism, there'd be no more of Grimlord's powers. Tyler looked into Ryan's eyes and apologized that he felt he abandoned him after spending a decade apart. Never wanted to end this way. From always traveling the world for finding better ways to seize Grimlord, to being brainwashed into a monster and operating his army. He wished he could make up for all the sins he bared if he could, even though he couldn't change the past. Ryan would never want it any other way. He didn't mention his real name. He vowed to keep a secret, otherwise he'd be screwed if he'd find out. She'll be killed either way anyway. Regardless, Tyler was glad he finally did. He and Ryan embraced each other, but it was short-lived as an alarm went off. What's going on? Grimlord has broken into the reality barrier. His troops are heading right this way. If they should progress further, then we must evacuate. No! We can't abandon the laboratory, Professor. Nor you. Grimlord may win this battle, Caitlin, but we must survive to ensure he won't win this war. Everyone tried to take in his words, though the alarm kept crying red alert as they needed to face their worst fear. Both the lab and the professor were about to be demolished off the face of both worlds. I'm afraid I'm not much of a tech genius, but I found some inspirations, like Reboot, The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, and even Digimon, even though I'm not a huge fan. I'm not into Tron either. And it's quite fascinating that I would use the VR Troopers as like an early innovation of virtual technology, even before today. I was very frustrated that Ryan went all the way on discovering Grimlord's true identity, as well as the moments from the two-parter Grimlord's Dark Secret. The audience knows about Grimlord's true identity, but not the troopers themselves. And it got cancelled. I figured only Hart and Tyler only knew and were just afraid to reveal it, so naturally I rearranged some things around involving the mutants. Another episode done, and since it's episodic, I want it to be a format of a mini-series. So stay tuned for the next chapter. Until then, this is the Ecron Writer signing out. Just Welcome back to another episode of We Are VR Troopers. Last time, Cheetah has actually tested out her new abilities that was an experimental VR armor created by Tyler Steele. And with it, she was able to escape with her life from the sete that actually saved her from drowning to her super speed, which could kick up to 60 miles per hour within a few seconds, much like a cheetah. And also, much like a cheetah, she had some very awesome VR armor. Meanwhile, mutants are falling during the war, and unexpectedly enough, the professor's lab has actually been bombarded by Grimlord's forces, and the troopers are in it, especially Tyler. How will they escape? Well, let's find out, shall we? Let's hope Grimlord won't get the upper hand. This is definitely one of the most dramatic chapters I have ever made. So if you guys are sensitive, I suggest you leave now, because there's going to be a huge casualty in this. And if you guys know VR Troopers, you know how deep that's going to be. Alright, episode 96, Heart Attack. The 4 troopers, along with Galileo and Tyler, were trapped within Horatio Hart's lab. The professor warned that General Ivar and Colonel Icebot had infiltrated the vicinity, and they were being surrounded. The red lights kept glaring as the hapless occupants felt the ground shake beneath them. They could immediately tell this was no earthquake, as sparks rained down on top of them. They shielded their faces upon the impact. There were also some pipes that burst and were emitting smoke from all sides. "Professor, we're sitting ducks here!" "Troopers, you must escape." Even he couldn't believe this was the end. "We can't go without you! We've got to take the fight outside!" "We're encased inside. The door is locked shut. We can't exit through here." "You must all transform. It's the only way to protect yourselves and evacuate." Everyone was a complete shock, as they couldn't take their mentor with them when the layer falls. Tyler and the others, he was like a technological mentor, and they must fend for themselves on their own. "You must all win this war and stop Grimlord. The time is now. Good luck. And goodbye." With a heavy heart, Ryan led the team to change into their VR avatars. One by one, they morphed. The first was Ryan, then Caitlin, next JB, and finally Cheetah. "Go now. Use your teleportation, JB." He reluctantly activated the vortex command, taking Galileo, Tyler, the troopers, and the enemy squads outside with them. By the time they emerged onto a barren field in virtual reality, they vowed to avenge Hart's demise, and they realized that everything but the knowledge of the troopers, as well as JB backups and their powers via virtualizers, were gone. Even Caitlin's flying automobile, she reckoned. "Excellent work, Ivar," Grimlord said with glee within the dark fortress. "We have taken the heart of the troopers' abilities. Soon enough, without their precious mentor, they will be defenseless. and I shall soon rule all of reality and win this war. No one can stop me! While the lab was collapsing, the remaining heroes met up with the Imperial Army, as well as several surviving mutants behind enemy lines. Several missiles were fired straight at them. Cheetah, get my dad and Galileo out of there! She nodded, and Tyler pointed toward a rock mass for them to hide. He said it was fortunate that cheetahs were capable of blending into their environments. Noticing the ravaged tank leading the pack, the warrior commented, "Well, well, well, if this isn't our..." wrong voice. "Well, well, well, if this isn't our old nemesis Ivar. I'll be more than happy to stomp on those bugs. No, damn it. I'll be more than happy to stomp on those bugs. VR Troopertron command, now!" Caitlin activated the prominent weapon. Via the sky base, the front rotated around to become the legs, blah, blah, blah. Female trooper leapt into the cockpit and she was ready to roll. It shot out eye beams onto the enemy fleet. As they retaliated, it was able to catch the fired upon missiles. It also tended to destroy tanks by stomping down upon them. The heroes knew that it stands a chance against Ivar, even swipe its tank with a kick, though she had her hands full with the aerial ships. They were too quick for Caitlin to punch with the Troopertron, so Ryan and JB lent a hand. While the combat was going on, Tyler fled with Galileo and Cheetah. Meanwhile, JB used his VR Techno Bazooka in conjunction with Ryan's VR Shoulder Cannon. Together they easily blasted the Grimstars, the battleship, and the virtual fighters into smithereens. "That'll stop them. These guys are dropping like flies. I'll use the battlecruiser to finish Avatar. Great, I'll check on my dad and the others. Good luck, you two." He also pondered to check on the professor now that the battlefield was being cleared out. Unbeknownst to them, Cheetah activated her super speed command as she led Galileo and Tyler away from the intense battle. It was like a ride as they were being tugged by her. "I'm detecting no signs of danger, although someone is coming, from about 10 feet, closing fast." Galileo chirped as he turned his head. Just then they heard a voice belonging to a tenor of sorts. Sure enough, it was Ryan. Tyler and Cheetah were relieved he returned safe and sound. "How are the guys? Are they winning?" "So far. We still have General Ivar in our six, though. I hope we're not too late to save the professor. We have to get you all back to reality." "Hang on. Grab Galileo, Cheetah. You remember how to return, don't you?" "I think so. But Ryan, I don't think there'd be much to salvage for..." But he wasn't able to finish his statement as they were being materialized. "Let's do it. Follow my lead." He didn't want to hear what his elder was saying. Cheetah obliged and he activated the way back to Earth. Meanwhile, the battlecruiser was having a tough battle against Ivar's ravaged tank. Eventually, JB was able to push it over a precipice, making the tank tumble on the way down. The assassin was trapped beneath the wreckage, being pinned down by the demolished body on his legs. He was barely able to see the Troopertron march up to him, standing an astonishing height like an ant meeting the Tyrannosaurus. "Time to put you away to the scrapyard for good, Avatar Ivar." Caitlin kept walking closer to the ravaged tank, raised the Troopertron's foot, and squashed the doomed vessel like an annoying fly. Both troopers didn't notice a certain mutant was watching over the whole ordeal. "Whoa! This is even better than smashing a souffle. They look good doing it." So much for the cavalry, late as usual." "Caitlin, how are we doing?" She walked up to him without her prized appliance. "So far, so good. That'll put a stop to General Ivar. Let's hope it's for real this time. That'll show what he did to the professor. I hope we're not too late, lest we forget Colonel Icebot." Suddenly they noticed the large army quickly running up and down some rises. They were still heading their way with their bone clubs and weapons raised. "The skeletons? Are they after us?" "I guess they hadn't forgotten about that protest they were planning." He knew all too well. few weeks ago, there was this incident when Caitlin looked through a mirror. It was like any ordinary mirror that was delivered to her, but something dire was set afoot. Again, Caitlin threw the looking glass. Gazing into it, there was her avatar. The original's body was fading. Ryan and JB were flabbergasted over the new Caitlin's erratic and volatile behavior, as was Cheetah and especially Snake and her kind. They volunteered to destroy all the delivery trucks filled with those accursed mirrors, which of course were operated by Scugs. While the double eventually decided to side with the troopers after being reasoned by Ryan with a hair of having him and the lab destroyed, she eventually joined with the original's body and became a cooperative copy since then via VR Trooper double team. However, Snake was still scarred by the incident so deep that she established a revolt against her. She was still on the trooper's side, but just hunting and willing to destroy that single one. I guess that's what they call a split personality. Kaylin and JB noticed the ruckus and braced for the worst. Snake and the rest of the skeletons met up and they were about to rush into them. But, in her native tongue, the mistress ordered her scary army to a stop. Everyone just paused in their tracks. Snake's crony Dead Hand was the first to speak as they lowered their weapons. Come on, Snake! What are you waiting for? Get her! She's the one we want! I'll use my confusion on her to make those slick matters so much easier. It was dripping with venom. Relax, Razors! I'll deal with her myself. The troopers prepared themselves for an assault, but something was amiss. It was almost as if Snake's memories just came back to her as fast as her cronies were going. Caitlin, I don't have any means of attacking you, nor sending you to the unfortunate grave diggers. I changed my deceased mind, and I realized a living friend is less boring and more valuable than even my golden bone. We were just so consumed over our rage, until we remembered who you really were. We were wrong. I was wrong. I hope you can forgive us for our misunderstanding. We were blindsided by all the bloodshed that we have endured, and we wanted to send you and your double to the graveyard as soon as we found out about you going berserk and working for Grimlord. We thought you'd be an enemy. More like Grim Reaper. I wish he would send him to Hellfield and never rise again. We weren't so thrilled about your doppelganger either. We'll fight by your side again without any repercussions. He looked toward her partner, then back at Snake. All right, we'll let you fight alongside us. We're certainly glad the undead mutants are on our side. Okay, but no cheap shots. If you pull a fast one, you got me to deal with. What a decaying deal. Psych! You really think I'm gonna shake hands with a live trooper? Both heroes forgave the army and joined in on the fight against the remainder of Grimlord's Imperial forces. Ryan, Tyler, Cheater, and Galileo emerged several miles away, and the troopers returned to their retro forms in unison. Each took a sigh of relief. She rested on a rock close to her. I'm so glad you guys are all right. I'm so glad you guys are all right. The war's getting rough out there. Me too. But we're not out of the woods yet. Tyler told Cheetah to go with Galileo and take it to Tao's dojo for safety reasons. He said the mutants would meet up with her shortly, as they would go to the location where Zictor Industries stood. Location confirmed. I'll lead Cheetah straight to it. She won't get lost, just several miles east. Good. May luck be with both of you, and don't forget to contact us in your VRVT if anything wrong should happen. Be careful. I will. Bye, Steels. While they were immersed in the battle plans, Ryan's memory of the professor's demise came back. As Cheetah and Galileo left, Tyler noticed his son heading toward the old wrought bridge, desperately calling the professor through his own gadget. Though there was no reception. Ryan, wait! Hey, What took you so long? Dark-named alien named Gangrene greeted Cheetah and Galileo. You guys are as slow as a drogger. I never thought a youngin' in a robot would move like a 100-year-old tortoise dying from old age. Guys! Thank goodness! She ran up to them. Tyler said you guys would show up. After hearing the choppy and short explanation, they agreed unanimously to infiltrate Victor Industries. While it was risky, Cheetah decided to morph into her VR armor. You know, it's kinda weird, but I think Galileo looks very much like R2-D2. After that statement from Cheetah, the mutants pondered for a bit before they gave it a sneer. Galileo spoke in a nervous manner as to why they were looking at it strangely. And just like that, they went all over the small robot. After several moments, it turned out they gave it a makeover similar to the outlook of the Star Wars counterpart. Well, how does it look? Not too shabby for a living being. You better have taken extra care with that liquid. If it should go into my circuits, relax, trash can. We did what we could. It's no different than dissecting a zombie. The little elbow grease to lift it back on its wheels, they were ready. Tyler kept calling out his son's name and followed him beneath a bridge. After treading a short distance, he suddenly saw him sulking as he was sitting on a nearby rock. From the looks of it, he was nearly devastated, for the professor and his lab were completely in shambles. The large dim pieces of the triangular arch were the only things that was left. Tyler slowly approached Ryan, and then he murmured, "Why did he have to go, Dad? Why did Grimlord finally achieve what he failed? Why now?" Tyler squatted next to his moping kid and laid an assuring hand on his shoulder. He really needed to listen to his words of wisdom in a heart-wrenching time like this. He needed us to win this fight, Ryan. He knew we couldn't escape such a horrible fate. We shouldn't mourn for long. He's depending on us. If we're to defeat Grimlord, we will finally find peace. He shouldn't die for nothing. Clearly there was something that Grimlord had been longing to do. He succeeded, knowing this was the heart of all their VR efforts. Teller warned Ryan that acting on revenge would only make the circumstances worse. He mustn't let his resentment for Grimlord consume him, even though this was actually the first time Carl himself was able to murder someone in cold blood. Just then, after hearing those driving words, Ryan's hand became a clenched fist as tight as an airlock. He slowly rose. "I will avenge you, Professor Hart. I swear I'll destroy Grimlord after what he did to you." He took in some deep breaths. He said he's the only one who must do this. He shall take the fight directly to the evil tyrant himself. Against his dad's wishes, Ryan transformed again. He then somehow immersed himself into a dark, cavernous cave, which seemed awfully familiar to him. Hearing a familiar, distinctive cry, "Gary!" He followed the sound and eventually saw his alien partner, Razor Kid. The dragon caught up with him, saying that he saw his best friend emerge here, and after the recap, he offered to join in and share his vengeance. The trooper even said, "If I should get captured, then so be it. I welcome the chance to deal with Grimlord face to face." So you decided to challenge him without fear nor hesitation. Clearly this is personal. Brooke's close ally nodded in determination. "I have seen you walk the path of revenge before." His mind shifted back as he remembered the moments when he did just that. From desperately searching for his old man at the cave in the virtual dungeon, to standing up to Decimator in a burning blood-fueled rage as Tyler was Darkheart. The latter was something he told him about. Nevertheless, he had been with Ryan through bad and worse. His psyche then returned to the present. It's one thing to dominate a whole world, but it's another slick and diabolical manner when your comrades in the world itself will be dominated. I'm with you, Ryan! Razor Kid slapped his hands and they gave each one a strong grip. They then headed off to dangerous territory side by side without any means of looking back. This was undoubtedly one of the hardest scenarios I came up with since I started writing this. The truth was, I never wanted the professor to go. It's not like I hate him in the lab. Far from it. It's just, if the series should go on into the new millennium, would the lab still be necessary as far-fetched as it is? I mean, yeah, this was made when VR was a wave of the future. Now it's so archaic. So I was thinking that it might be best to let Professor Hart no longer suffer under Grimward's conflicts. Only his mind survived when he first encountered her, after all. It's like out with the old and in with new and more productive ideas. Like a forest fire whose trees get destroyed, but if given the chance, they can grow back better than before and becoming more fire resistant, like as an opportunity for advancement as sacrificial as it is. Aside from these other dark moments, I also made a brief reference to the Season 2 episode Caitlin Through the Looking Glass. I always wanted to make that joke Blood Clot made, but in all honesty, I did not like the incident itself. Sure, Caitlin got an upgrade like Ryan did, but having the doppelganger around just irked me. It also made me worry that she might succumb to the effects of a split personality. So another chapter done. And I think this is where the story would branch out into two separate guidance, much like ending it all. I'm going to need a lot of time to work on them, no doubt still recovering from making the decision on losing Professor Hart. When will the next episode be? Well, we'll wait and see. Till then, this is the Ecron Writer signing out. And I hope I won't get in trouble for this. That song really creeped me out when I was a kid. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of We Are VR Troopers. Last time, our heroes have witnessed the tragic event when Professor Hart, as well as his lab, were being under attack by Grimlord, as well as General Ivar and Colonel Icebot. Fortunately, they were able to destroy the two thugs, but damage was already done. So Ryan has actually vowed to take the fight to Grimlord himself, leaving Tyler abandoned in reality. Meanwhile, Caitlin and JB have actually reunited with Snake and her undead clan, who have actually had a change of heart as they were about to revolt against Caitlin and her doppelganger, but has actually joined them instead. They accepted on what she could do, and they didn't want Caitlin to go to the graveyard or the scrap metal yard. So they took on the war effort. And with Cheetah, she actually decided to go with Galileo to Zictor Industries, where they would disguise themselves as trick-or-treaters since it's still around the Halloween season. So, with all that out of the way, let's get on with the show. Alright, episode 97, Infiltration. Some songs would... Oh, by the way, what you just heard was from the Strider soundtrack, from the Genesis version they used to play when I was a kid. I can't pinpoint exactly when I was introduced to the game, but I think it might have been around the same time I was into the VR Troopers. Heck, I think some of the tracks really work in the fight scenes. I mean, heck, even the enemy Air Force track theme from UN Squadron would be a nice fit. I couldn't really find it. I don't want to get in trouble with this. Anyway, this may be a two-parter. One for Cheetah, another for JB and Caitlin. Ryan will have to come later, so let's just get this over with. The troopers, Caitlin and JB, joined up with Snake, the head of the Deathskin Razors, as well as her entire legion of undead skeletons. They eventually arrived and looked over an open battlefield. They saw a bunch of mutants, mainly the trolls, face off with an endless swarm of Ultra Skugs. Apparently those were Grimlord's mooks before he should send out the heavier artillery, JB suspected. The hero suddenly felt a large tremor as well as a humongous distinctive sound that was strong enough to emit a shockwave, stunning their enemies upon contact. They also tended to squeal as they tried to escape the massive cloud of stench that was erupted from the trolls' rear ends, no less. They were led by Mo and Spew-Puke, and while their kind wasn't the most effective against constant oncoming assaults, they made up for it as the best lines of defense utilizing their bulk, muscle, and endurance. Instead of taking the fight on the ground, being exposed to the nauseating vicinity, JB summoned and engineered the skybase. Caitlin, Clut, and Snake jumped in afterward, while her flesh-eating comrades took the front lines, as they never cared about the immense odor since they were technically undead. As the quartet were soaring over the calamity... Look, JB, it's the air castle! Yeah, it seems that Colonel Icebot is at it again. I wonder if he should turn into an abomination like last time. If we take out General Ivar, he should join in with his other pals. I can't wait to shatter his cold-hearted shin for good into billions of ice shards. They eventually approached the Sky Castle, finally confronting Colonel Icebot. Below them, the techies arrived backing up the Ultra Skugs, putting the foot soldiers in a state of paralysis by their electrocution whenever they made contact. This put them in a vulnerable disadvantage, as a taste of having their own medicine for being puny underlings. Meanwhile, Cheetah, Galileo, Gangrene, and Bones Jackson finally arrived at the exterior to the 100-foot-tall skyscraper. Looking up, Cheetah said, "Whoa, this place sure is high. I bet this was how Grimlord appears in the Dark Fortress." After that, she dropped her head since she was getting an unsettling feeling coursing through her body. She always got that nervous sensation whenever she looked up an extremely tall structure. The mutants, though, weren't really affected. Time to end his reign of dominance once and for all. And maybe I'll get back to doing what I do best, my hobby on ruling my own domain with my own kind. Ow! Hey, don't let it get to your head. There's still a lot of space up there. Get your feet on the ground where they belong. Ow! She was being pierced by JB's robot using his metallic claw. Bickering would get us nowhere. I have scanned the place and it is being looked over by female agents. They knew the trek would not be easy. Oh, I have a bad feeling about this. She felt her stomach lurch after hearing the bot's warning. Let's get this over with. Hey, we'll protect you, human. You're safe with us. I personally vouched to send them to the graves with closed caskets. They soon marched inside when they entered two massive automatic doors. The place was accompanied by dim lighting, and sometimes they felt as if the walls would close on them, making the hallways have that claustrophobic effect. Gangrene and Jackson figured the best chance was to get to the top floor of the creepy castle, assuming that was where Victor's prison was. To their surprise, every room was full, with dead silence, that is. They suspected things were too quiet and easy, wondering if the party should await them upstairs. The trio whispered and agreed to never use any of the provided lifts, as they could be littered with booby traps. They decided to head up more discreetly by treading slowly and quietly. Everyone remained on high alert as they kept their ears and eyes open for a possibility of an ambush. Moments later, which seemed like almost half an hour to them, they finally made it to the top. Straight ahead was another wide door embedded in a large font, Carl Zichter. Bones volunteered to try the doorknob, thinking it could be protected by something, like it would be red hot to the touch. Fortunately, it just unlocked, allowing them access into his personal office. It was just as opaque as the rooms before it, and he actually saw the cause of all that darkness. There was a large window covered by very thick black blinds that were drawn closed. They could barely see the large table smack dab in the center and the huge iguana cage to the right. Heh! I never knew Grimlord would own an alien here. It's not really an alien. He's a reptile. I'm not sure if it's either an iguana or a chameleon. The reptile just looked through the glass and licked its mouth. But the one thing that really caught their attention was a little green prison illuminating in its sinister glow. So this is how Zector gets into virtual reality and becomes Grimlord. She was fascinated by this. Yeah, I bet this was how he was able to assimilate Mr. Steele's knowledge. Now, if only to destroy this thing. Gangrene looked around, but found no plugins nor any blunt objects to smash it with. Remembering all the chaos that Grimlord caused over the past few years, realizing he was a billionaire in his actual form, he seized upon the prism and touched it with an eager grip. The alien felt a painful shock. An electric current coursed through his arm. The impact threw him off his feet just nearly a foot away. He crashed onto some nearby office furniture. Gangrene! They rushed to their fallen ally, asking if he was okay. The dragon was still stunned from the sudden blow, almost unable to move his excruciating muscles. The skeleton wished she'd be the one to touch the prism. I should have known we wouldn't have access to the prism so easily. I should have tried. That's what we get for assuming. Nice try, Gangrene. A for effort. Well, well. Looks like we got some intrusive gnats crawling around our boss's turf. The group jerked their heads as they looked behind. They saw three women in black skin-tight uniforms consisting of lightless tank tops, leather pants, and boots. Each one of the secretaries looked alike as they all wore intense eyeshadow and mascara. Their shiny, dark blonde hair were tied back in buns. They were skinny and had pale skin almost as white as bone. Let's just say we took a wrong turn. We were about to do some trick-or-treating here, but we simply got lost. A simple navigational error. She was about to walk off until one of the secretaries grabbed and held on her bare limbs to the point of nearly twisting it. Our master never likes trespassers, and he despises trick-or-treaters. And we saw you sneak over to the prism and attempted to destroy it. Good thing Mr. Sector activated the defense mechanism while he's doing his own personal affairs. He ordered us to destroy you, and so we shall." All three girls stood at attention, their bodies transformed into a group of skugs. "Oh no! Not them again!" They leapt up into the air and confronted the group. The mutants shielded their young trooper and Galileo from their advances as they bravely fought them off. It was proven to be easy until they noticed the trio change. They did a fighting pose, facing each other with their arms and hands curled up, and turned into ultra skugs. "Those monkeys are really starting to rattle my bones!" They fought them with every tooth, claw, and bone they possessed. Even Cheetah and Galileo participated when the thugs gained on them. The robot used his evasiveness as well as its metallic hands to defend itself. As experimental as Cheetah's powers were, her abilities were automatic. The whipping tail couldn't get enough of them as it kept on whacking and tripping the skugs. Her dark yellow sharp claws sprung from her nails as well as her setae. By the time one managed to abduct her as it wrapped its arms around her, she kicked and screamed, trying to escape. The mutants worried that they may disappear through the ground and take her hostage to Grimlord. But suddenly Sheeta let out a screech as loud as she could. It was so ear-piercing that it actually caused some sound waves toward the surrounding individuals. Everyone was holding their burning ears. Skugs were the most affected. The mutants saw their chance as they teamed up and forced each skug back toward the one the most open. As usual, when they made contact, it dissipated as their bodies squirmed. "Wow, that was amazing! Those skugs definitely got what they deserved." "Indeed they did. You weren't too shabby either. For a robot, I mean." It was incredible." "Her powers have yet to be fully tested. Tyler really knew what she was capable of, as well as the cheetahs." "Yeah, but how are we supposed to destroy that prism?" She reluctantly contacted JB via her VRVT, wondering if he was still preoccupied with the war. It had a yellow coating with wildcat spots covering it. She gave him their literal crippling predicament. In his trooper avatar, he greeted to her and the mutants, saying it was a great idea bringing in Galileo. He said they could use him as a means to absorb the volatile energy. After all, Grimlord actually did the same thing to Tyler, as a sort of download while he retrieved his knowledge. He figured Galileo can do the same, draining the essence trapped within the crystal. "All you gotta do, Cheetah, is command it to. No different than Oriclon absorbing its data trying to find the secrets to her own abilities. So it's basically the reverse." "Okay, I think I understand." She ended the transmission, knelt next to Galileo, and gave the command. "Galileo, hook up to Grimlord's prism and absorb its energy. Right away, Cheetah." The R2-D2 did just that. Its body opened, never received any damage. Instead, it utilized the energy flow toward its memory core and sucked in the data like a leech draining blood. She and the mutants were so astounded by this. The two monsters even laid a couple grenades next to it. "You're not gonna blow up the place, are you?" "I hope the city folk wouldn't notice. Otherwise, they'd be sent to the graveyard." "I'm sick of waiting. It ain't my style. Hurry up, we need to demolish this blasted thing, and maybe the ominous office as well." Cheetah's VRVT chirped in her pocket. She picked it up. It was JB again. "Cheetah, is Galileo uploading Grimlord's crystal?" "He is." "Good, but I should warn you. I have a bad feeling that his information may corrupt Galileo's circuits. As soon as he's done, can you bring him to virtual reality?" "I think so. Why?" "Because it'd be great to give Grimlord the element of surprise. I'll tell you as soon as we dock on." The message was interrupted when the skybase was being shook. The troopers were under attack. "We got some company. JB out." Her screen shut off, and they were anxious as they waited for Galileo to finish processing Grimlord's encrypted codes. Back at the skybase, the troopers and mutants found themselves in the middle of an energy charge. The entire sky turned into a dark mix of fuchsia and black. At times Colonel Icebot kept rapidly firing some volleys of lightning and streams of ice to disable the aerial cruiser. Nevertheless, JB unleashed several missiles which seemed to have no effect. Eventually, the troopers and mutants decided to abandon ship, and conveniently enough, they landed into Colonel Icebot's control room. "Is everyone okay? That landing almost shattered my bones." Several robots surrounded the group, and Cluck confirmed. Those were the Turbo Techies, the elusive inhabitants from Asteroid 66. Instead of surrendering, the guys fought them off until they got to Icebot. During the attack, Caitlin offered to use her VR double team, to which Snake didn't really approve of. The heroes succumbed to some electric shocks, though both Snake and Clot advised them to go to the Techies directly, as they had weak reserves and poor defenses. They made up for it in decent offense, though with their wired footballs of destruction. Through a team effort, the two Caitlins and JB used their laser guns and fired upon them, rendering their wires fried and took the malicious machines out of commission. They then used the power transfer command to restore JB to full strength. For one of the display screens, apparently they were the defensive side, while they believed the offensive side dealt with Darkstar dragons and even reinforcements from the Toxic All-Pros and Manic All-Stars. If you guys have played Mutant League football, you should know those last two teams are by far the best. From before, it looked like they were winning almost effortlessly, and they were being struck down by Grimlord's anticipated forces, including the lethal strikes from Despair's staff. Frigid Interior became even more unsettling as the chains were being coated in ice, frost by the bursting pipes. JB advised the group to stay away from the bone-chilling emissions, and soon came across Icebot. "There you are!" "Ha ha ha! You're just in time, troopers! You may have destroyed my altered mutant from last time, but I've been developing a trick up my slick sleeve. You five won't be so lucky. You will never destroy me like you did with Ibar. Your affirmation for your professor would be futile." "What did you say?" Unfortunately, he slipped through their fingers beneath a hatch in the floor. Plugclot and the Tech Whiz led the way as they descended. They went onto a few unusual conveyor belts and soon ascended into another chamber as they fought off more robots, avoided a few warheads. JB actually slid under one and vandalized it with his VR Super Saber. Aside from the laser pistols and grenades the mutants used, this was the primary weapon during the hunt for Icebot. When they finally got to the next area, a few large enemy bots got in their way. Something was forcing them forward. The wall behind them was pushing them toward the other end. The wall ahead looked exactly the same as the one pushing them. There was a climb that appeared to be about 50 feet high. Troopers and mutants ascended as quickly as they could, but the walls were rapidly closing on them. One of the Caitlins began to get nervous. "This is not good! We're going to be squashed here! I've got an idea! Quick, JB! Use your fighter bike!" "All right, VR fighter bike command, now!" The vehicle emerged as it clung onto the left wall. The original Caitlin got on board with JB, and she shot the sickle to the top. The other Caitlin held onto the motorcycle, as did the mutants. "Hurry up! The walls are gonna destroy our boats to dust!" "Hang on!" Boosted the fighter bike, and zooming up the walls, the other side continued to crush their poor flesh, metal armor, and limbs as flat as pancakes. Luckily, they escaped in just the nick of time. They caught their breath for a brief moment, and the black trooper wondered if his teammates were holding together. "I put all those traps as of late. This is way more disturbing than a horror movie, is it not?" "That sure was a close one. Yeah, we would have been finished for good if it wasn't for our quick thinking." After the quintet progressed further and fought off more armored foes, they soon came across a room that had an unusual gimmick. The gravity shifted, and somehow they were actually able to walk in the ceiling, while at times hold on to the ground, even though there were some large pointed arrows jutting up and down. Thanks to the improvisations of using both plastic and metal armor, which was actually an idea based on the magnetic episode. I forgot what it was. Say, plastic can't be magnetized. Troopers were accustomed to this over a short period of time, but the ever-changing anti-gravity made the mutants nauseous. Heck, even when they lost their lunch, the vial actually stayed where they were. Ah, there goes the hearty meal I had earlier today. That was a good tender flock of fleshy dogs. She held her poor bare ribs. With some elbow grease resisting the pull, the trio fired the laser pistols toward a massive metal olive-green shaft, immersed into a spacious chamber where Icebot was controlling a humongous core computer. JB later realized it could operate the entire fortress. Not only that, but the large contraption in the surrounding area was capable of manipulating gravity pulse, hence the previous room having the same effect. While it was activated, Clot and Snake were stuck and being crushed up against the ceiling, and soon violently thrown from wall to wall. Ah! I don't want to die in a grave using intense gravity! The troopers also seemed to have that effect, though they could control their maneuvers using their armor, and the two Caitlins destroyed the atom-looking objects orbiting the large computer unit using their pistols. JB eventually used his laser lance and struck the core directly in the center. Sparks and flames flew and lit the motherboard and the exterior. No! How can I lose my precious fortress to the likes of you troopers? Grimlord will make you pay for this. Soon I'll be reborn again. If I go down, I'll take you with me. The air castle began to self-destruct upon the anti-gravity unit's demise, as well as a permanent one for Icebot. As they ran off, the guys grabbed onto the mutants' stunned bodies. JB theorized that the air castle itself was being powered by the central core, allowing it to soar through the skies. It utilized elements of weather such as ice and electricity from the upper troposphere, though it couldn't get any higher than that in the virtual world. It was no doubt a crippling weakness to the air castle since it depended on the core's energy for power and transport. As the group was escaping, they were trapped since the runaway ended. Since the runway, actually. And their sky base had been eradicated from Icebot's attack earlier. They were so high above the ground that not even the fighter cycle could be too life-threatening, and the Troopertron would take forever at the rate the fortress is going. The Fearless Five were finally showing signs of dread as they braced for the worst, hoping for a fast light-speed method of transport would come their way. Remember when I said that Strider had an impact on me while I was into the VR Troopers, aside from the Mutant League? Here's another reference. The Vixens sort of remind me, or perhaps resemble close to, the Kunyang from Strider, beginning at the Sky Thunder MK2, the fusion level. We're a vicious team of women that specialize in deadly martial arts. Each one is color-coded, but unlike the Vixens, they appear in a group of usually 3, with the 4th one as a mysterious member. They seem to function in sync and appear to be lethal in combat and strikingly efficient. I always thought that they'd be related to Despair as a sort of mother figure to them. Wrong again. And here are more songs. That scream that Cheetah made was inspired by the mutant from X-Men, Banshee. She may not use it to fly, but it was a great idea to help stun their enemies in times of great distress. I also came up with that idea from Simba the King Lion, a Korean anime series in which the cub emitted sound waves to make his enemies disoriented and vulnerable. Although it was a onesie for me. A few sequences were also inspired by the Genesis game, including the part I always get stuck on when I was a kid, with the moving walls. The last portion was also another inspiration, as this was the final segment as part of the flying battleship Balrog. The central computer was a central part, thus its destruction, and also put a hindrance to Grandmaster Mayo's plans, and in this case, Grimlord's. But the troopers and mutants are trapped within the air castle. They've been stranded upon losing the sky base. Will they escape in time? What a huge cliffhanger since the first 2 episodes. A 2-part pilot. And much like it, there's a cliffhanger and suspense. Will they escape? Well, find out next time. And I leave you with this scary song. Whew, I should have played this sooner. Actually, wrong song, guys. I'll present it to you next part. Oh man, rather unusual. Oof, that was creepy. Welcome back to another episode of We Are VR Troopers. Last time, the story is actually split into two parts. One was actually Cheetah, who went on the infiltration into the Zictor Industries, as well as taking Galileo, Gangrene, and Bones Jackson along the way. They dealt with a few Skugs, and once again, due to Cheetah's amazing ability, leaving them vulnerable, they were actually defeated, and Galileo was on its way to process all the information while also draining the Prism of Power, to which Grimlord uses whenever he enters virtual reality. And on another note, Caitlin and JB, along with Bloodclot and Snake, have actually infiltrated the Sky Base, Colonel Icebot's Sky Base. While there, they dealt with a few techies, which were operated defensively while the offense took care of the war, as well as the reinforcement teams. So they were actually able to defeat Icebot. However, he began a self-destruct mechanism, destroying him along with his sky castle and the troopers and the mutants with it. Will they escape in time? Well, let's find out. Alright, episode 98, Nerds of Steel. And I have a pretty good feeling this is going to be a long one, so be patient. Ryan and Razor Kid stopped short as they heard a familiar whirring noise as well as seeing a scary sight. They came across more of those sinister honing heads they encountered earlier at the virtual cave, as well as the neighboring muddy home of the Vile Vulgars, the Hump Dome, before they self-destructed several months back. Again, if you've seen Quest of Power, you should know this. These floating heads activated as their yellow-piercing eyes flashed on and searched out the troopers' energy. They remembered that if they exploded however they did, then Ryan's power would be sapped as well, resulting in a recoil. It was indeed confirmed as he was being too cocky with his newer, stronger powers fighting them off, resulting in a few damaging explosions to his VR armor. I hate these things! More of them emerged without any signs of stopping. They had the same effect as before, and seeing his friend get hurt badly with every blow, Kid was about to lose it. No! All the dark memories rushed back to him as quick as his boiling blood flow, including enduring the destruction of the virtual dungeon. He tried to repress these nightmares, squeezing his eyes shut as he held his head in horror. Then he repeated a mantra. Ryan never gives up. Ryan finds a way. Until a powerful epiphany struck him like being tackled by a bunch of bulky trolls. Ryan finds a way! Suddenly, as he was still clashing with the barrage, Ryan! Switch into your retro form! Hurry! What? But I'll be vulnerable! Quick, turn back! If you don't use your virtual powers, then they won't have any effect on you. Or, at least they'll be minimal. But if I lose my powers again, I would. Just do it! Trust me! But keep an eye on your virtualizer, though. Reluctantly, he did just that. Razor Kid told him to find a place to hide and take cover. The dragon saw more of these creepy death masks activating and heading toward the frantic duo. Go! Hide! Right now! Go now! Ryan obliged and watched Kid confront them. Rumble Fumble! 5 active long red grenades appeared on the alien's back, hidden away by rows of spikes. He held one in his tight, quaking hand. All right, Grimlord. Time to have a taste of your own viral medicine! I will strip away your powers! He threw one onto a floating specter face and they exploded on contact. Looking at Ryan's virtualizer, the damage was still in effect, but somehow it minimized as it flashed. Kid continued his rage on the remaining heads. Eventually, the coast was clear and Kid gave the signal. His partner came out wondering if his plan really worked. He was afraid that his virtualizer would be more fragile from the onslaught they put on it. He gazed on it and Kid mentioned, maybe you should turn back and survey the damage done to it. Okay. Trooper transform! We are VR! It activated and he examined himself after the sequence was complete. How is it, Rye? Well, I feel like I've taken a few blows, but I think I'm okay. By the way, how did you know that could work? I didn't. But I did remember what you told me of what your dad said to you, that the mind goes first and the body comes second. You know, just play little tricks or something. I just figured this would be a good strategy, and I don't want us to get maimed and to have you lose your powers again. Ryan said that that was the smartest thing Kid have ever done. Really? Mutant was caught off guard by the remark. He said if it wasn't for him, he would have been back in the troubled position he was in before. And that was what Kid dreaded the most. After all, they needed everything they have to finish off Grimlord. Okay, you got a deal there. Give each other a tight handshake and we're off again. Ha! You see that, Mr. Rules Everything? We are smarter than you! Go ahead and make more of your abysmal traps! You don't stand a chance! Bring it on! I was born ready to deal with your lousy schemes! Give us the best you got, which is nothing! Come at me, bro! Ah! All of a sudden, Kid's feet went still, and they were shocked to the core as an electric current licked them. Ryan rushed to the side, but he persuaded him to not get any closer. He suspected it was an electrocution, trap made by the techies. It was brief, but it hurt as badly as a porcupine's spines. Just then a robot with a wide body and skinny limbs marched up to them. Kid identified it as the techies' coach, Trans Shooter. Made the usual chirp like the other techies, only it was accompanied by digital voice. Too bad for you, Mr. Steel. I should have computed your carbon unit would be more resistant behind your shallow armor of yours. Of course, every organic life form has a breaking point, including your old man. That put Ryan in a state of shock, not in a literal sense. I can calculate that my colleague's wires and circuit would abduct him effortlessly. What? What do you know about my father? Here we go again. You'll have to perish in order to find out. Grimlord would pay handsomely for this. Time to shut you down, trooper. Let's see who's got nerves of stainless steel. He dealt with a bot that was taller than his henchman with its only electric shock, immobilizing him for a moment. Luckily, his VR armor was more resistant than Kid's scaly body. Trans's arms shot out several footballs, though Kid cried each one were wired for death. It also shot out some missiles as well. Ryan avoided the blows and challenged, "Is that the best you got?" Kit remembered the techies are weak against critical hits, so Ryan faced off manually using his default laser blade. He was about to unleash the final blow as it glowed. "Ryan, wait!" "Dad?" "Yes, Ryan, listen. Don't destroy Trance Shooter. You must incapacitate him so he and his team can be reprogrammed. They work for Grimlord, but they're still part of the Mutant League." He sliced off his arms and legs, but it wasn't done yet. His last-ditch effort, wire sprung out of its open wounds, blinding and shocking the trooper. Flashing back to the time when Grimlord did the same lethal action, Kid managed to get back on his feet and threw a large nearby rock toward the current, disabling and even sliced some of the wires. They soon left the cavern before Trance activated an explosion. Kid felt he had some very sharp needles and pins coursing through him. Ryan felt the same. Did manage to communicate with his dad again, though Kid was the one who apologized about Trance Shooter due to the extenuating circumstances. "I've also picked up some readings that half of the techies have been decommissioned. We have to save the offense." This reminded Ryan of something as he urgently said, "Hurry, Dad! You gotta get out of here! Trance Shooter said he sent a couple of the techies after you!" Unfortunately, he was cut off. The trooper was in deep thought. Kid kept asking what was the matter while he tried to snap him out of his reverie, and he made the crucial decision. Because of his many gallant efforts and being such a great ally to him, Ryan decided to give Kid permission to pilot the Blue Hawk and lead the assault on the Dark Fortress and the Sky Castle along with the other aliens who have their own reprogrammed saucers. Kid couldn't be any more ecstatic as he always wanted to fly his own ship and cause massive mayhem. Only against Grimlord, of course. Ryan called upon the VR Combat Module, an all-terrain cruiser made of two vehicles, the combination of the VR drill tank and the jet fighter, the Blue Hawk. It was conveniently stored inside the flying shuttlecraft form of Ryan's own VR shoulder cannon. He momentarily saw it soar to them and hover over the ground. "Ooh, this is so great! We can definitely vanquish that virtual dominator with this!" Despite Kid's giddiness, Ryan offered to give him a crash course in order to use it properly. It was his aerial fighter, after all. Kid gleefully contacted his kind. Unfortunately, they were too busy fighting off the ground units, and their numbers were dwindling. Mainly the rest of the techies, the lethal Despera, Doommaster, and the Vixens were the fatal culprits. During mid-flight, one way to settle the war, Ryan said, was to infiltrate Colonel Icebot's Sky Castle, where JB and Caitlin were. Kid was able to fire upon it, coated with bursting flames and dark thick smoke. Yahoo! The exterior damage was too much for the sinking fortress. They barely saw the 5 distressed stragglers wave to them. "There's JB and Caitlin! Hang on! I'll take the helm!" Ryan did just that. He offered the troopers to escape underneath as there were some pods awaiting them. There was one for both Snake and Caitlin, the other was for Claw and JB. They were able to escape in time as the Sky Castle plummeted. "Whoa! That certainly would make Icebot thaw and melt in there. Top one off for us." "You said it." Ryan offered Kid to fly solo while he assisted the armies below. The guys were finally deployed and the techies and the last few powerful teams showed up, including the Deathskin Razors, Darkstar Dragons, and even reinforcements from the All-Pros and All-Stars. Although they were vigilant, they were still being scorched by Despera's scepter as well as the Dark Fortress. Ryan decided to let the two mutants and the troopers split up, letting the former assist their kind against the viral forces, while the latter team takes on Grimlord's field soldiers. Caitlin's unanimously volunteered to take on Despera, while JB would confront the mighty Doommaster. Both Caitlins rushed to the scene and hid behind a nearby rock dune. They saw the Wicked Witch on top of a tall cliff gleefully fire upon the hapless squads below. "There she is! I couldn't miss her." She then decided to formulate a plan to redeem herself while a partner would distract her aim. "Well, well, it's about time I deal with a formidable opponent, a VR trooper no less. It's about time too, Doommaster. Time to end this." foot soldier did the same as he took out a broadsword of his own glowing in red energy. So be it, trooper! I would admire sending you to the scrapyard. Enough talk, let's do it. On guard! They took some small steps, eyeing their every move with a keen vision. Doommaster and JB rushed into each other, and their blades sent some spectacular sparks flying as they clashed. Sparrow was literally having a blast sending the mutants to cinders, till she was hit by a stray laser. You! How dare you mess with my wardrobe! Not to mention intersect with my glorious wrath over these meddling mutants! Those mutants happen to be our friends. In order for me to protect them, you're gonna have to go through me first. Gladly, trooper. She dodged the rays with ease as she cartwheeled out of the way. She also kept on shooting her own projectiles, but the Sparrow was too quick. She also levitated and done the same process as well. Ryan assisted in the fight against more Ultra Scuds and Techies, while Snake and the mutants got their hands full with the Vixens. Several of them actually fell in battle, and some of the skeletons' bones shattered and fell into rubble. The trolls tried their best to draw them back, yet despite their efforts, using their bulky bodies, they were still being powerless. Ryan pitched in as he saw another mutant get their limbs torn out. Then he used his laser pistol, to which they easily evaded. He closed in for the kill, and during the lethal close combat, 5 against 1, he noticed their powerful blows, mostly from the magnificent kicks, were made of plasma, hindering his armor. They were swift as lightning, and eventually it was too overbearing for him. He used his laser blade for offense and defense, as his hand-to-hand combat wasn't as strong as theirs. He kept holding his own, though he was beaten down multiple times. While the Vixens were being preoccupied on the single trooper, the group was taken down and bitten and scratched like crazy, turning them into the living dead, much like the skeletons. Ryan scurried out of the way so he wouldn't become an infected member of the Walking Dead, as penetrable as he was. He did go with a little smirk. Enjoy your hearty meal while you can. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Snake. I owe you one. You've already done enough, Steel. She then noticed Despair floating around and firing toward her targets. I'll show that succubus some manners! As the trooper made some more attempts to distract her, it was proven futile when Despera had the upper hand, floating around like a phantom and having better range. On top of that, her scepter itself was able to extend longer to reach her distant opponents. In fact, she made a direct hit on Caitlin's armor, sizzling her left shoulder. She went down, stunned and wounded. The golden ghoul was knocked over the edge by an oncoming mutant. It was Snake! Despera rolled down the cliffside and gracefully landed on her stilettos. A swarm of skeletons charged toward her, and she wiped them out one by one. She then fixated on the trooper, who was struggling to get up. She aimed and fired, but it was the other Caitlin that she hit in dead center. Doppelganger went down like a ton of bricks. She was willing to sacrifice herself while she shielded the original from the scepter. Caitlin crawled to her side and saw the large steaming gash in her teammate's chest plate. No! After watching her die, Snake managed to leap on top of Despera, taking her down as well as make her lose her large helmet with the golden locks. She also landed a deep scratch upon Despera's face. She felt it. A scratch? Is that the best your pent-up rage can do? Such an inferior move. She yelled her scepter. You'll end up like your powerless friends in a pile of rotting metal and flesh. Not quite! She never revealed its intention and continued to avoid her wrathful strikes as the wound began to spread across her irritating face. It finally took effect, turning it into a fleshy blue as it was rotting away. The once female pharaoh's body soon became immobile while she noticed her limbs were turning lifeless, as with the rest of her organs and body parts. At long last she dropped the staff. Caitlin crawled slowly to grab it and aimed it toward Despera, noticing the snake scampered away. This is what you did to my double! Incinerating her instantly, hardly leaving anything in her wake. The Grim Lord in his dark fortress fired back and hit the top of the scepter, dissipating it instantly. The alien saucers then shot upon it while Ryan approached the fallen double. Oh no! Knelt close to her and raised her head slightly. She let out a weak groan. Her powers and vitals were fading. Ryan and Caitlin were watching in sadness side by side. The double held both hands. "Don't let it end this way, guys. Finish off Grimlord. Do not let all realities fall under him, just as I did." She looked over at Ryan. "Thank you for helping me see who he really is." Then to Caitlin, "I appreciated working with you. I know you can win this." Lowered her head before she gradually disappeared and turned into dust that was taken by the wind. After that moment, Ryan slowly got back on his feet and declared to take the fight to him personally, while Caitlin would assist JB and the mutants. As he tried to comfort her, he was then intercepted by an audio transmitter. He then heard Grimlord. "Worth to make that sacrifice, trooper! Grimlord! I wouldn't make another move with your ruthless determination if I were you. As we speak, your puny comrades are falling one by one, including your extraterrestrial fleet. What do you want with me? You'll know once you get there, whether you'll be willing or not, Ryan Steele. I'll be waiting." Transmission was dead. He just looked up at the hopeless situation as each of the saucers were being eradicated by the fortress. He worried that Kid would be next. He looked at his ally, still struck by her loss. "Caitlin, I'm sorry, but I have to face Grimlord. I'll go alone from here." "What? Are you sure about this? Is your father trapped in there?" I have to do this by myself. I always wanted to finish Grimlord. He challenged me to meet with him inside the Dark Fortress. I'm sorry for being so selfish, but I have to do this. It's the only way to win this war." Oddly enough, she accepted. "If that's the way to do it, then so be it. I'll help out with the guys down here. Good luck, and hurry back. You'll be okay with Snake and her undead legion. It all comes down to this. Yeah, now off you go." He headed off. JB gave Doom Master everything he had, though his brute force nearly put him at an advantage. His own blade kept radiating that same unoppressant energy, eventually rendering the troop's sword feeble. His armor was also taking quite a beating while Doom's broadsword landed each hit. JB became weaker, though he still never gave up, which actually put him in more danger. In fact, he was so powerless that he failed to activate his laser lance command. Nothing seemed to have worked. Vulnerable, he went down in a heap after Doom Master landed another devastating blow. Seeing his friend in trouble, Bloodclot intervened as he tackled his lethal enemy down. "You want a piece of me?" Despite his weakened state, JB raised his sword. "Bloodclot, take this. Use the laser lance. It's our only hope." His hand didn't reach up for long. The superhuman took it before the black trooper dropped. His body became still and illuminated. Clot thought it would explode, but instead it just dematerialized. "No!" Doommaster just smiled. You think this is funny? Losing a friend like this? Nobody messes with my clan!" Memories of losing the Galaxy Aces in his coast rushed back to him, making his rushing blood boil. He activated the laser lance successfully and clashed against the Tyrant's own blade. It was almost like a Jedi fight with the intermixing of the red and blue hues. Through his rage, Bloodclot soon impaled Doommaster in the chest. He was electrocuted and lit up as bright as a Christmas tree. Clot backed away so far, knowing what'll happen next, as his enemy continued to wail. As he expected, he collapsed and burst into a towering inferno. Extra crispy with the laser lens. Just the way I like 'em. It's even better than smashing a souffle with a sledgehammer. I just love fights like that, even more than I love mirrors. He admired the view of his greatest enemy's defeat. Fortunately, JB's living vessel was in an automatic retro form and wound up on the bed within the sacred chamber of Tao's dojo, feeling some discomfort as he slowly went up. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ryan climbed onto the most tallest cliff. The atmosphere was thin, though he was still able to breathe with his armor. Thank goodness he was unable to fall off this time, which he did a few times. He looked up and saw the tiny dark fortress in plain sight. Before he had a chance to react, he was then beamed up. He soon arrived within the dark fortress while Kid and his cronies fired the impenetrable exterior just to slow it down. He took the tubular elevator down and emerged at the bottom, which had no doors. He continued his descent past the platforms, went through some corridors, and wound up in the wide main chamber. "Where are you, Grimlord?" Ryan! He then saw his father bonded against the red bank wall with his arms spread out. "Dad!" He stopped in his tracks. "Ryan, no! It's a trap!" As soon as he was about to rescue him, Grimlord intervened. "Welcome to my lair, Ryan Steele." "What have you done to him, Grimlord?" "Nothing yet, foolish boy. You should remember the last time we fought like this. You were as puny as an ant when I stripped you of your powers. You will be assimilated, and once I'm through with you, say farewell, Steele, and perhaps your treacherous father will enjoy all the fun." Just then he conjured and then released a strong wall intermixed with purple and black of violent dark energy. It was like dealing with intense gravity as Ryan tried to resist it. Grimlord then wagged his reptilian tail, raising his right hand, and shot an energy beam hitting Ryan directly, dissipating the barrier. He rolled and got back onto his feet and fought the ruler off with everything he had, including his own whipping iguana-like tail, and a few powerful energy beams left over by his first form. He also released some of his binding shocking wires to which Ryan's blade sliced apart. His throne floated slowly from time to time, avoiding the troopers' projectiles. At one time, Ryan used his laser pistol, though it was ineffective, as it absorbed them. As the intense battle wore on, Grimlord then unleashed a white spray onto Ryan's virtual armor, rendering him weakened. He actually remembered it was the same method that one of his toxic mutants, Amphibidor, used on him previously, to which he destroyed twice. Which, by the way, is actually the Season 2 premiere. "Ryan, you've been infected! You have to fight the viral slime!" It was actually the same way the techies succumbed to the damage to their circuits and put them in some hypnotic trance, making them subordinate to Grimlord upon capture, he said. What a coincidence, huh? He continued his rampage, thinking that the slime would have no effect, until he also gave in to the damage in a matter of minutes. It left him vulnerable as the poisonous white substance assimilated his armor and mind, putting him in a sort of heavy daze. Taking advantage of the situation, Grimlord used the opportunity to manipulate his hallucinations, desiring him to kill his own dad. For when he abandoned him as a child, even when he grew up after 10 years, even when he was becoming a Darkheart, like father like son, he sneered. Ryan eventually caved in and slowly picked up his sword, making the hold more deeper. He marched up to him, and Tyler kept begging him to remember and fight back Grimlord's evil influence. From the times when he was training as a kid, using his teachings after 10 years, when the lab and Professor Hart were destroyed, saving him after being brainwashed as Darkheart and never losing faith, or attempting to save him after Grimlord barely took away his life. Even the powers he possessed now, when Tyler recovered with the healing crystal Tao possessed. All those memories returned, even when he was in the lab, reuniting with Tyler in virtual reality before it dissipated, even when he vowed to never stop looking for him, when the situation got bleak as Tyler was being banished back to the virtual dungeon. I'm not afraid of you, Grimlord! No matter what you do, I'll never stop looking for my dad! Never! Do you understand? Can you hear me? He even heard his father echo in his mind, although he was speaking to him. The past, and even in the dark times, are some of the things that makes us who we are. My past, it's real. Then say goodbye to your past, Ryan Steele. If you can't destroy your own father, then I shall do it myself. He immediately got in the way of his amazing onslaught. In his weak state, only his rage fueled him. Grimlord used everything he had, including throwing his sword like a spear, sprout tentacles from his throne to electrocute and bind him, blast lasers from the sphere on his helmet, and create and blast electrical energies from his hands. While Ryan was enraged and just about to use his epic laser saber, his powers abruptly ran out. He was completely vulnerable. He transformed again. Trooper transformed! Oh! The reptilian tail strangled him, bringing him to his knees. Pyramid of Empowerment Absorption 100%. Goody! Mutants couldn't be more relieved. Finally! Jeez, took you long enough. I thought the suspense was gonna kill us. How long have we been waiting? I don't know, about an hour? That would take us as long for a corpse to decay. Speaking of decaying, we need to finish off Grimlord and destroy that prism. The structure itself looked hollow and just as translucent. It was completely emptied from all the evil ruler's essence, including Tyler's advanced knowledge. Let's kill! Hold on, you bloodthirsty mutant! What should we do with him? Pointed to the cage. Before we do that, shouldn't we just follow JP's orders in releasing the volatile energy before it can corrupt its circuits? I think I know just the place. She transported the bot and the mutants to virtual reality in the middle of the Void Club. They were about to follow through with JB's plan until she saw the immense spacecraft complete with its large wings and jagged exterior, almost as though it looked like a massive, sinister demon. Look! See that dark fortress up there? Location of Grimlord's stronghold confirmed. Aim towards that vile hunk of junk! Galileo's scanners were shot as the corrupt data blurred its vision. Cheetah tilted its head toward it, and she figured it'd be a way to disable the shields over the virtual fortress. Managed to lock on as a white target appeared over it. Turned red momentarily. Cheetah gave it the order to fire. A volley of lasers shot up, making the interior weak. When the process was complete, she squealed to return to reality if Grimlord should spot them. They then quickly returned back to the opaque building before the mutants did their own work. Fortunately, the pyramid-like crystal was destroyed by some destructive grenades, while the mutants and the others hurriedly escaped before the spark reached the tubular material. Although the top floor, as well as the gigantic window, began to blow, leaving no glass being shattered and raining down upon them. Shaken up along with several unsuspecting spectators, it was decided. Let's just get the hell out of here before somebody sees us. Good idea. He ran away from the once corrupt skyscraper just before it was being swarmed all around by emergency vehicles. Moments later, the quintet were walking with the tall tail between their legs in another segment of the confusing, bustling city. Aside from being guided by Galileo, they weren't the most dedicated. What a day! She held the tight iguana. Hey, at least we destroyed Grimlord to arrive at that zany Scepter's base of operations. It's not that hard to believe that he was the one this whole time ruling over the virtual world and causing all this trouble here. Yeah, thanks for the news flash. I think we should just let this pet roam free. What? What, and let it wreak havoc with the wild? Forget it! He doesn't deserve it. Even Cheetah knew it was a bad idea. Well, if we can find Tao, maybe he can use him as a companion to keep him company? I guess the young trooper has a point there. After all, running a gym solo is never easy, especially when dealing with all those erratic kids. No offense. I mean, Ryan told us about his first day running it. It was quite entertaining to hear it. During the reverie, he suddenly heard a car. It turned out to be a shiny red punch buggy of sorts. Shut up! Beeped again. We've gone as far as we can go. It honked again. All right! All right! We'll walk in the mud! She let out a fit as she stomped hard on it. Just then the automobile stopped, and the windows lowered. She noticed the dog passenger panting in the front seat, soon after the driver. Tao actually wanted to pick him up in the shiny red Great Wall Perry, accompanied by Jeb, who could no longer talk. He questioned who the mutants were, and Cheetah sheepishly said they were just trick-or-treaters, acquaintances of the troopers. Yeah, we should get going. We need to see what they're up to. He pulled Gangrene's ear. As Tao was taking Cheetah and Galileo to the dojo, he said that JB was waiting for them. She was undoubtedly confused on what he was doing there. She also showed him his new pet iguana she just found. Tao knew from the get-go about the mutants and the VR troopers putting Cheetah in a state of shock. Before she had a chance to react, Tao assured she didn't have to explain since he suspected about the kids as the VR troopers, as well as all the battles they fought since they were known to be heroes and individuals with pure hearts. He also figured as much since they first brought in Tyler to his secret stash of sacred crystals to help him get restored to full health. He parked the Perry in the dojo entrance. JB showed up in a moment's notice. JB! What happened to you? Relax, I'm okay. He and Tao were unloading his robot. He asked if she followed what he asked her to do. Cheetah affirmed it, and even he was a bit relieved that Tao knew everything about their secret identities, which were originally given by Tyler himself moments after his recovery. He also said there was a bomb scare at Zictor Industries, and there's a possibility that he was caught in the blast, though the cause and the people responsible remains unknown. Either way, he deserved it for corrupting our city all this time. He knew exactly what to do with Tao's pet iguana. As they were heading inside, there was a lot to discuss, including the destruction of the Pyramid of Powerlessness. It's now up to the Steels. Tao made a silent prayer. With that, Grimlord's body started to deform. He took notice of it. What? What is happening? He was finally sapped away from his dark powers and was rendered back to his human form, as Carl Zictor himself. This was the first time the Steels made the official connection, although Ryan was still weak. Outside, one of the aliens declared, "The shields are down. Lock on target and destroy the Dark Fortress." No! Cease fire! Ryan and Tyler Steel are still up there! Ryan continued to struggle and reach in a snail's pace. Victor had one last nasty surprise. He drew out a metallic mount from its interior coat pocket, aimed a pistol toward the duo and clicked it. Ryan stopped short, and the powerless Grimlord threatened to shoot them for destroying his avatar, and always interfering with his conquest. Dad, I'll take the blow. One of us has to die first. I'm the one he wants. No problem. Bluehawk aimed at the uppermost portion, hoping not to hit the Steels. Then he fired a few lasers onto the now defenseless Dark Fortress, bursting a large opening over the main room. The impact startled the three occupants, and the Steels were excited to see Ryan's own fighter jet. Kid! Seeing Zictor reaching for his pistol, he let out a statement. Now to say one more thing to that evil overlord. Sayonara, sucker! Ha 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 ha! Yes! After his brief victory, when he exited the cockpit and spun like a teal tornado, he gently patted the injured Ryan's hand before he used his claws to slice Tyler's spines apart. Great work, kid. That should be the end of Grimlord. It'll be the end of us if we don't get out of here! Wait, Ryan! He was away. With a sore neck and weak body, however, Ryan stood up slowly, then hesitated while Tyler and Kid were climbing aboard. He discarded the virtualizer and the place continued to blow all around him more violently than ever. Ryan! Come on! At first he felt like he wanted to go down with the ship, to make a self-sacrifice as the final end to Grimlord and his suffering. A huge blast erupted, causing the Blue Hawk to separate from the devastating spacecraft. When the smoke cleared a little, even though it formed a dark stack, they lost sight of the doomed trooper. He found a broken window, then he paused again, wondering if this was right, or would be cut to ribbons. Risking to take either chance, he leapt out before the entire vessel was covered in flames. Tyler and Kid barely saw him as he hit himself hard along the way down. Ryan! Blue Hawk caught almost immediately as Kid put it into full throttle. He then steered it clear from the exploding fortress before he even crashed into it. Everyone on the ground cheered as the dark fortress was obliterated, almost like an enormous firework performing a grand finale. The Blue Hawk landed easily along with the other saucers afterwards. And here are the songs for that. Da-da-da. Everywhere else could use the default music such as Virtual Cavern. So this isn't the last chapter, despite having the epic fights with Grimlord and his cronies. More is yet to come, so stay tuned for that. Until then, this is the Ecron Writer signing out. And hopefully I'll have time for this. Welcome back to another episode of We Are VR Troopers. Last time, the war has actually been on the troopers as well as the mutants' favor, as JB have actually lost to Doom Master, but fortunately Bloodclot finished him off with the awesome laser lance. Despera has actually defeated most of the mutants as well as the undead, including Caitlin's doppelganger. But the original Caitlin, as well as Snake, actually finished her off for good. Unfortunately, the scepter was incinerated due to Grimlord's Dark Fortress. And also, Ryan decided to take the fight to Grimlord, and he barely won. He was able to rescue his father thanks to Razor Kid, and he actually got his memories restored, as he was being infected and hypnotized by that white goo. The same one that Amphibidon, I think it's what it was, Amphibidor used. So, Ryan actually had his powers ran out, as well as Grimlord's, because the power of the Pyramid of Power was actually absorbed by Galileo and then soon destroyed, as well as Karl Zepter's fortress. So, both Ryan and Grimlord both lost their powers, and he barely escaped from the Dark Fortress itself. So the war is nearly complete. But what's Ryan's fate? Let's find out. Alright, episode 99. Victory is at hand. Ryan recently returned to his retro form after his virtual powers ran out as he was on his last legs fighting Grimlord. Tyler was still in bondage, and the Steels were just knocking on death's door until the evil ruler of realities got his powers sapped and turned him to his true identity, Karl Zichter. It was thanks to the green crystal prism known as the Pyramid of Empowerment that Cheetah, Gangrene, Galileo, and boats Jackson destroyed. During the fall of the virtual Dark Fortress from the alien onslaughts outside, Ryan discarded his virtualizer thinking he'd get caught in the crossfire. He did manage to escape, however by a leap of faith, from Grimlord's spacecraft just seconds before it exploded. Razor Kid immediately brought him in as he was piloting the Blue Hawk, which Tyler himself was impressed with his skills since he was an alien. He made a soft, slow landing while the mutants and the remaining trooper Caitlin cheered for their final triumph over their nemesis, as was Cheetah, JB, Jeb, and even Tao. But not everything was so exhilarating. As soon as Kid saw the reality barrier while he and Tyler were escorting the unconscious Ryan out, the dragon carried him to it, thinking he wouldn't survive long in the weakened condition he was in. Tyler agreed, though he suggested to look through it first to make sure it was a safe location. Kid peeked through and saw a human trekking toward the rip. He began to panic and shoved Ryan's body through it. The break closed as soon as the trooper escaped from the virtual realm. Caitlin was one of the more serious onlookers, as when she saw Ryan, she was taken aback. "Tyler!" He looked toward her with a grim expression. "Is Ryan okay? Did he survive Grimlord and the fall of his dark fortress?" Painful memories of his narrow escape from the virtual dungeon came rushing back to her, as he, Jeb, and Razor Kid were desperate to escape the labyrinth they were trapped in like rats. Ryan, on the other hand, was so stubborn as he anxiously attempted to find his dad there, until it self-destructed, and there was rumored to be nothing left. Both the Professor and JB theorized the dungeon was completely wiped out from all realities, until the trio barely survived. "I believe he was, Caitlin, but Razor Kid just found a rip in the reality barrier. We will soon close these anomalies, but I hope this leads to a safe haven. He really needs to recover, but not here." "Kid!" The alien looked up with a startled expression, then ran to the duo. "Where's Ryan? Where did the reap lead to?" I'm not sure. All I could see was some kind of a paved road and a sort of temple yonder. It looked very ancient, but I never had the chance to look through it. I was scared when I saw a female, walk up to us. I didn't want to go through with her seeing." He tried to connect the dots. He assumed this was a Buddhist temple similar to the one he and Ryan go to all the time. If that's the case, then he may be in good hands. "I'll go after him." "No! The reality barrier here has been sealed. We'll have to find him manually." "You've done well. Leave this recovery up to us. Don't worry, he should be alright if someone wants to take him in. He'll need all the help he can get right now." Tyler! Ryan's virtualizer! The pendant was cracked as he cradled it. Why would he leave this behind? Caitlin was at a loss for words. He thanked Kid for retrieving it. He suggested Caitlin to warp themselves back to reality and find his son if they can. They dissipated within seconds. It was actually during their victory that a young woman around his age took him in while he was still unconscious. She was thin and looked around his age, though she had an oriental complexion. Her shiny black hair was pulled back into a small ponytail. She was wearing a purple tank top, denim jeans, and black stilettos. With as much strength as she could muster, she pulled him on his back into the temple itself. As for the surviving mutants, the uproar eventually subsided, and the remaining coaches returned to retrieve their own teammates. From Bones to Crazy Bones, excepting Mick Wimple and the 60 Whiners, to Trickster, Mad Max, and Dante Inferno, to Bricka, Buck Troll, Tossa Bricka, and Buddy Riot, and even Madness, Median, and Ice Bodies. Though the teams led by Stratoblaster, Crux, and the Warden, and most of the Techies, Evils, Slayers, and Bashers were unable to survive. The malicious machines from the offensive themselves have been decommissioned, and the General just received word from Tyler that he'd reprogrammed them. He also thought that maybe he'd utilize the intel from virtual reality to restore the mutants that had fallen during the war, including Cheetah's personal favorite species, the aliens. The coach finally gathered the War Slammers and the special team. He congratulated everyone, including Kid, Bloodclot, Snake, and the twin trolls, Moon Spew Puke, for a job well done. During that time, they noticed the superhumans and skeletons had regained their lost flesh, restored their identities, and the latter group actually started bleeding, showing that their humanity was growing back. Everyone was shocked to the core and hardly recognized each other without their mutated appearances. To Clot, this was a similar process when his pal JB also had been restored, when Ryan and the late professor reversed the transmutant curse. However, he wasn't expecting this to happen to them. Neither was Snake. As he gazed into his football helmet he took off, he saw he looked similar to that member from Kiss without wearing makeup. With his long wavy jet black hair and fully healed complexion, he began to grin at himself. Wow, I actually adore mirrors a heck of a lot more. Look at me! He said to his fellow mutants. Then he began to notice Snake, who was no longer a member of the undead. Snake looked older and wiser with her own peach-whitish face. She also had some thick, vibrant lips no longer covered in scars. Her teeth were shiny and new, and her long, sleek hair and eyebrows appeared straight out of a human magazine. She also had on a navy blue coat and tight black pants covered in cleavage. Clot was completely awed by her spanking new beauty. He managed to find his words. What happened to you? She gave him a stern demeanor. Why? Grimlord's demise did it. We vanquished all the vile from virtual reality. So, how do I look? Looks good. They marched toward each other and admired their attire in a close, warm-hearted fashion. Or at least that's what Snake and her cronies were feeling. Meanwhile, Caitlin just turned into a retro form and Tyler emerged beside her. She and JB hugged each other tightly as he was so glad to see them back in one piece. The elder cleared his throat and reiterated they must find Ryan. Curious, the black trooper listened on his predicament and grew just as concerned as they were. The troops and Tyler were walking on an empty road that overlooked a Buddhist temple, wondering if this was completely accurate. They had been searching for clues, especially through Galileo, going through everyone in Crossworld City. Razor Kid, are you sure in your discretion this is where you dropped off Ryan? Yeah, I think so. After a quick display coming from his own communicator that was being... damn scrolls. That was being projected, he did manage to see it. Yes, that's it! This is the place! The duo was overjoyed, though Tyler wasn't quite uplifted. This is a very sacred place. Ryan must have been taken in from this exact spot. He bent down to the street as if he knew the precise spot where he was dropped off. He then faced his comrades. We can't just barge in here. I have a feeling he's going to go through a long recovery. Why do you say that, Tyler? Well, remember the time when you guys rescued me from Grimlord out of the virtual cavern and then brought me to the Tau to recuperate? I'm afraid it won't be that simple. The process may be similar, but I'm afraid he'll do something he hasn't done before. And that is... About a day later at the secret room in Tau's dojo, the general told Cheetah through her own VRVT that Ryan was beginning to fight his demons. Demons? Where are they? No, I mean his inner demons. You mean that Ryan is being possessed or something? No. No, Cheetah, it means that Ryan has some personal demons. Inside. At first the young trooper was astonished by Klotz and Snake's human-like appearances. What he's trying to say is, Ryan just needs to recuperate for a while. You know how your mind sometimes can't let things go, and it distracts you with its negative thoughts? Well, that's basically what it is, only it's something more negative. His feelings, stress, loss, pain, sadness, emptiness, sometimes anger and feeling alone or helpless. It's like he's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD for short. I have been through this once. So has my distant relatives. I am the general, after all. She wondered if he would be all right and whether or not she can see him again, but the mutants didn't give her much of an answer. That it takes time for a person to recover and heal the scars Grimwiller left. They believed he's been dealing with them since his dad disappeared 10 years ago, and the darkness on top of it. As the transmission ended, Cheetah walked out. On the PC in Tao's dojo, JB linked it to Galileo. I believe I can trace Ryan as well as read his vitals with this. Only one way to find out. While the bot was scanning it, he came across a few images with lines that formed double helixes, those that looked like EMV waves. How is he, JB? As he headed over to the keyboard, according to schematics uploaded by Galileo from the virtualizer Kid found, he said he's physically sure Ryan's ready. Mentally, he's not so sure. There was a slight change in his brainwave patterns. Teller guessed he must have gotten a concussion during the strangle from Grimlord depleting his oxygen, and while he was escaping from the Dark Fortress. He decided to let Kid bring Ryan's virtualizer to the temple he's in. He was then comfortably wrapped in a black velvet cloth along with his blue-red mobile device. Ryan wound up inside a dim-lit bedroom laying in a comfortable bed, was being tended to by the young Oriental woman as she used a warm cloth to cleanse his face and soothe his head. Later she then let him sip a warm broth. He was still blacked out and very weak. Slowly but surely, Ryan's almond eyes eventually started to flutter and open. Felt his body was being weighed down heavily like 1,000,000,000 tons. With his blurry vision and heavy head, he looked around. He thought he was still in virtual reality, but from his surroundings, everything seemed organic, including that lush orchid growing within an elaborate flower pot sitting on a nightstand beside him. There was another one at the other side with a statue of a lucky cat. The room still gave off a warm glow from a few flickering aroma candles. He slowly sat up, still very groggy as his eyes struggled to stay awake. It seems that you've finally come around. He looked toward the serene voice and saw her. He was deeply admired by how she looked. Maybe it was just the lightheadedness. Who are you? My name is Ling Yu. I was the one who brought you here. I saw you collapse on the street outside not too far from here. You seemed so weak, so pale and out of it. I'm Ryan Steele. Where am I? This is one of the ancient Buddhist temples in Crossworld City, although this in particular is interior, and it's a bit further away from the other open-air one. My parents used to own this place. Now I'm the only one. I see. His head drooped for a few moments before he perked up a little. Oh, I really want to thank you for saving me. I was... The cat got his tongue. He wasn't sure how to describe the precarious situation he escaped from. He felt so relieved he wasn't still in Grimlord's fortress or in virtual reality for that matter. Ling just laid a caressing hand on top of his and whispered, Try to get some rest. I can see you're still not well. He did just that as he laid his head. He fell back to sleep within minutes. Several hours later, during the sunny afternoon, he was strong enough to walk alongside Ling. She had shown him the rounds, including a very beautiful koi pond. Some trees with pink petals were covering it, and he grew intrigued by the exotic surroundings. Ling said it was a little something to remind her of home. Whenever the weather's nice, she'd meditate and relax at that spot. Ryan used to do the same at his own sanctuary. During their trek through, he suddenly noticed himself and Ling holding hands pretty tightly. It was a nice warm-hearted sensation, but he startlingly let go. I'm sorry. No, don't be. I didn't mean to be so intrusive. It's all right. I always seem to have this effect. He calmed down his raving heart and mind. As they got back to the entryway, Ling spotted something lying on the steps. It was a large piece of black velvet. As he opened it, he looked inside. There was a few of Ryan's belongings. The shiny object reflecting the sunlight got Ling's attention. Holding it gently, he described to Ling that it was one of his dad's memos for him when he disappeared for 10 years. She really did admire the beautiful pendant. She was also curious of the special walkie-talkie he had, as she'd never seen anything so small and advanced. Can it actually call someone? Well, only one way to find out. Through his VRVT still functioning, to which Ling was fascinated with, Ryan made the call. He was inside a kitchen of sorts while Ling was fixing him up something to help him regain his lost strength. It was displayed on the computer screen at the dojo, and he said he'd be staying at the Buddhist temple he was taken to, unlike his dad's. So far, he wanted to stay until he's ready to finally overcome his personal demons and see his friends who were eagerly waiting for him. They, especially Cheetah, were getting very anxious. Look, I gotta go. I'll come back to you all soon. I promise. And I thought I was the one who had these problems. How can you tell? I'm a general. I used to be a part of the military, as were my distant relatives. Madness, ice bodies, median. We are all the same when combating battles both within and without. Heck, I always thought that Tyler would suffer once he came to, since he went missing for a whole decade. Jeez, he should be so dang lucky his mind hasn't fried yet, especially when he was at Starkar. Sorry, sir. But why would Ryan go through all this? Maybe the final battle between him and Grimlord was too much for him. Besides, it was usually him who would take on the most daunting of tasks. He was often alone. That may be, but I feel that he lost his train of thought. Then he collected them. I think since I used to have the sins working for Grimlord and being like a vagabond, I believe Ryan's carrying the burden. That my sins are somehow being passed down to him. Or what if it's destiny? What if it's destiny? It actually could be. He has to finish what the Father has started, but from in here. I can believe that. So can I. A lot of unique traits had been inherited by his father, including his pure heart. He can break this curse with love and support. Night after night, Ryan had been suffering from night terrors, being Grimlord and some other dark disaster appearing in his mind. Through Tao, it was later revealed that the caretaker's name was Ling Hu, as meant for compassionate and understanding, while the surname meant jade or rain. She masters in Taekwondo much like him in karate, and he began to notice that she and Ryan were sharing a sacred bond over time, like the Florence Nightingale effect, as Blood Clot said. During his recovery, however, Ryan said nothing of his VR powers, nor the fight against Grimlord, only that he's been having trouble fighting his inner turmoil. About a week had passed until Ryan led her to Dao's dojo as he was fully healed, as well as reasoning with his former self within a tall mirror in his older VR armor. He hallucinated as he looked into it, battled his doppelganger, including his lethal double lightning hands. At first, he avoided its attacks until he had no choice but to use his laser pistol and laser blade on it, causing massive damage. He never finished it off as his illusion begged him to, saying it was an inferior self, and questioned what it would make of itself since it realized who the real Ryan was. He accepted it as himself, and all his purged emotions, and reassured it that the dark days are behind it, and it's no longer alone. He persuaded it to recall his dad's teachings, including that of humanity, that all of their past experiences, including the dark times, have made them into who they were. He forgave it as he got himself together. Then he and his reflection touched hands on the mirror. After that, Ryan said to Ling he has finally recuperated. He declared it was time to go back. Oh, you're leaving? I am. But I never wanted to leave her so soon. Of all the times they had spent, I want you to come with me to Tao's dojo. I'm certain my friends will be waiting for me there. You'll love Jeb. He's my dog. She actually agreed to head there together, and he promised her he'd visit her often. They took a nice long stroll there. As they got inside, he hesitated as he noticed his friends in their usual quarters. He told her to stay, and after the excited reunion, Tyler and Tao questioned how he was able to combat his personal demons he kept referring to. That was when she came in. He gave her a nod and introduced Ling despite her shyness. To the main quartet and Tyler, it'd take a while to get used to Jeb no longer speaking in their language, just communicating as any other canine. Regardless, everyone almost instantly warmed up to her, almost always appreciating her for healing Ryan's deep mental and physical wounds. They could even tell he was in top-notch condition because of how exuberant he looked, including his eyes. As Ling was being shown around by Tao, Cheetah, and Tyler, the duo wanted to give Ryan a little pep talk. So Ryan, how do you feel towards her? He was so dumbfounded at the statement. JB clarified that if he's starting to have any deep feelings for her. From what Ryan told them, it seemed that even though it's been a week, they were pretty much connected while his soul, body, and mind were being tended by her. He was hesitant with the thought. But I thought you wouldn't want me to fall for someone. I mean, I never fell in love with anyone before. Still, I feel so. When the others got back, Cheetah was still talking with Ling and Jeb. Tao advised him holding his pet iguana. Oh, you should never doubt what your heart tells you, Ryan. Even though your mind would think differently, you should still listen to it. You must never be afraid for what you are feeling. He's right, son. I remembered having these feelings of doubt, nervousness, fear that I might reject her and let her down. You must not be afraid and try to drive her away. Believe me, I had these same conflicts and sensations like you do right now when I first met your mom. I later knew this was my true calling. Don't be afraid with what your instincts tell you, Ryan. Do not hesitate. Respond to her like how she would respond to you. And never doubt your inner feelings. It'll come in time. Oh, and Ryan? Don't ever mind us. Yeah, we got your back, buddy. No matter what decision you'll make. We had been doing some thinking. It was a surprise, though Caitlin and JB accepted their own relationship. Sometimes they worried it may not last, but if it would, then it'd be no problem. Caitlin always wondered who would actually betroth her, since she felt she was in the middle as to whether her soulmate would be either Ryan or JB in fear of alienating the other. She did highly regret falling for Percy, though, as he was clearly not her type. But she figured it'd be JB after all, if Ryan and Ling's relationship should work out in the end and flourish. Besides, in the past, the two troopers were seen alone together quite a lot, from battling to when they needed to cut Ryan a few breaks. He just smiled at them and thanked everyone for their unwavering support. Hours later, he and Ling were at the same shrine where he visited so many times, and as they held each other close watching the sunset, he made a soliloquy of his thoughtful lesson taught by his dad as one of the very last. Humanity, it can always be our greatest virtue. We must never underestimate the power of the human spirit and what it can do, whether it be by blood, used through love, kindness, and social intelligence. It could be our most powerful weapon, or it could be our greatest curse, but it can always help to get us through, even during our darkest hours. My dad said that all our past experiences, even our turmoil, our actions, our morals and values, and our personal desires determines who we are. And I realized it can be used through anyone, no matter how old or how young, or whether it be a subspecies such as a mutant, a robot, a higher mind, or even man's best friend. We all have some degree of humanity inside us. Just depends on how we use it. It all comes down from deep within. It pours from the mind, body, and soul. There was no doubt in my mind when Razor Kid once uttered this. We are VR. That was one of the most treasured lessons I will never forget. As for the mutants, it's most likely that Bloodclot, Snake, Razor Kid, the Pukes, and Nelson, as well as the troopers teaming up, may be the former Galaxy Aces' substitutes. Most of the War Slamers also pitched in, and some of the teammates performed on both sides, especially the troopers. Kid was the quarterback, Ryan was the team captain, Clot was the kicker and running back, the Pukes provided great defense, and Caitlin, JB, Snake, and Cheetah were great linebackers. They actually helped them win the Mayhem Bowl against the league's two best teams, while Tyler and the general coached from the sidelines. And finally, episode 100. The future is now. About 15 years later, Cheetah finally moved back to her childhood home at an assisted living apartment in Crossroads City for the handicapped. The first place she went to was, of course, Tao's dojo. She went in expecting to see Tao himself, but instead met up with a distinctive individual. As she approached the main spacious area, which seemed rather familiar and different to her, the stranger marched up. His tense body looked at had aged with time. He had on broader shoulders, muscles, still had some short dark blonde hair, but it appeared to be faded instead of looking vibrant. He welcomed her to the place, and his voice was a bit more coarse than before. Complete in his karate wardrobe, he gave her a strong handshake and introduced himself. I'm Ryan Steele. I now own the place, though I sometimes share it with my dad. He and I are business partners and experts in martial arts, don't you know? Made a striking pose. Then everything was in place. Ryan Steele? Then she became very ecstatic as she recognized the mentor she once knew so long ago. Ryan felt the same while he remembered Cheetah. Their sentences kind of ran into each other as they asked how they've been, or how great it was to see each other after so many years. He was about to close up, and he couldn't believe it was Cheetah, the one who recruited the mutants in their victorious battle against Grimlord. They were very happy to see each other, and Ryan offered to take a seat at the usual location where JB's PC stood. It was replaced by a large black LCD screen accompanied by a keyboard. Come, we have much to discuss, especially since that day when Cheetah moved away to Hill Valley. While the conversation took root, Ryan's cheery voice started to return, much to Cheetah's joyfulness as was hers. It was almost like yesterday since they first met here and became such close friends, until that dreadful day when she had to relocate after her parents' divorce. Very sorry to hear that. Have you made any contact with your mom? He heard that Cheetah and her dad have been living happily together with a significant other, although their relationship with their distant parent had shortly become strained. It's never easy being a single parent. I'll always remember it wasn't easy when my dad raised me. I never knew my mom, though, as she passed away moments after I was born. There were some complications during delivery, he said. Changing the painful subject, she asked how the other former VR troopers were. He said that Caitlin and JB had also moved out to Los Angeles, where she can fulfill her dream as a Hollywood reporter and journalist. JB finished his scholarship and graduated from Crossroads University in his field of technology, top of his class. However, Ryan never really wanted to advance to higher learning. Instead, he decided to stay within the city and run the dojo after Tao's untimely passing. Since that tragic loss, he and his dad decided to keep the establishment running. They'll keep the namesake in his honor, as well as Tao's brothers. Also, being that a dog can live up to 13 years, Jeb also passed away. Ryan actually owns a brown puppy from Jeb's late girlfriend, Princess, named him Jeb Jr., although having him talk wasn't quite on the agenda yet. She actually heard a bark, and the energetic brown pup ran up to her. She was overjoyed by his presence, and he gave her a few smooches on her cheeks. There was an upside to all these losses, and that was when he finally had the courage to marry Ling, the same woman that saved its life that one time after Grimlord's demise. If it wasn't for her, I never would have been alive right now. I then proposed to her about a year later on that day we've met. He showed her his own ring made of tiny pearls, specially made by her. Oh, let me introduce you to our kids. He stood up and left, leaving a stunned cheetah behind. Kids? As in plural? He returned moments later with his son. These are my kids. Taylor. And Suri. This is Cheetah. She's one of my oldest friends since we were nearly as young as you two. Hi, Cheetah. As they waved to her and made a bow, she waved back. Eventually, Lang returned and was glad to meet Cheetah after so many years. It was fortunate Cheetah didn't have to explain anything since Taylor was born. Ryan finally told them all about his past experiences as a real and virtual hero. He also wishes to pass it down to them. He described that Taylor specialized in karate while Suri was into taekwondo, although the dojo itself had expanded and was now designed to teach all ages a variety of martial arts, which the young ones were interested in learning. Taylor seemed to be the spitting image of his dad, as Cheetah looked like he did when Ryan was his age, albeit 15. Ryan really wanted Taylor to be a future VR trooper someday. He also said that Caitlin and JB also had kids, a son and daughter named Jerome and Katie, respectively. Tyler had been expanding the lab where the late ruin stood and is still advancing virtual technology to this day. It was actually Taylor that helped Ryan overcome his demons for good. In some meditated sequence where Ryan was trapped and Taylor courageously fought off the looming darkness, that even took the form of Grimlord at times. Together they used their talents and vanquished it. Ryan really appreciated that he was glad to have a son, and also not pass on the sins he and his father inherited. Several days later, the troopers were reunited at last. Soon the kids got to the newly advanced laboratory and they were finally ready to test their new VR abilities. Only this time there were 4, with Taylor, Katie, Jerome, and Cheetah. She actually retrieved her virtualizer as Ryan made the decision for safekeeping at the dojo's enchanted chamber until she moved back from Hill Valley as memos. The other children got their own pendants, albeit smaller than their elders. While everyone was watching, the children bound together and Cheetah led the transformation. Trooper transform! We are! The quartet emerged at the center of the usual desolate landscape. Cheetah wore her usual avatar, though slightly taller to fit her stature. Taylor got his dad's older armor, the blue and red, though it was shorter than his. Kitty got the same avatar her mom's double used to wear, and Jerome wore the same avatar his dad had. Tyler spoke over. Good luck, future troopers. A new adventure awaits you all. Make us proud. Story ends after they did a team salute, after they first huddled, made a hand pile, and cried as they released and raised their hands. We are VR troopers! The future for the next generation of the virtual reality troopers is just beginning. Much like that scene in Dragon, Ryan was able to overcome his past demon for good with the help of his son Taylor. Like Link's name, they were made up, and the former troopers still needed someone to carry on their legacy. The series really needed to get with the modern times and evolve virtual reality too. So, the story as well as the show as a whole is finally complete. No doubt that it's one of my all-time favorite series and some of the most nostalgic. This was something I always wanted to do a long time ago. Perhaps someday, Saban can get off the overly saturated Power Rangers wagon and focus on its overlooked sister series and do the same. Like they all say, all good things must come to an end. I'm glad I was able to do so. And of course, I'm the Ecron Writer, signing out. And, well, I just hope VR Troopers would have a future advancement to this series, while also staying true to the original. I just wish not a lot of time has gone by. So this would truly be my last project before I go on hiatus, unlike a trip in paradise. So, I'll explain this in a later video. Until then, this is the Ecron Writer signing out. Take care, everyone.